All right, I think we're live. Mic check 1 2 1 2. Mic check 1 2 1 2. If anyone in the chat can hear me, just push one. All right, got a confirmation. Thank you for the confirmation. Welcome back to Black Brain Trust. This is episode 506, Space and Technology. Please hit the like button as you come in, share the video if possible, hit that notification bell so you get all the updates from the Black Brain Trust, including those posted on the community tab. Docket and description beat the video for you to follow along with. If you want to engage in discussion, there'll be a link in the chat for you to click on. When you click on the link, make sure you raise your hand so that one of us can acknowledge you and advance you to the panel. There is a new Zoom client available. Before you jump on the panel, make sure you update your Zoom client first before joining the panel. I'll get the link and then we'll be right back.
They gotta stop lying to the kids, man. Feeding them that same old bullshit. All right? Regurgitated crap. It's the meaning behind the sacred symbols, the goal behind the patience that makes it simple. For me to be the creator, I had to stay consistent. Knew that it would be greater later and stay persistent. When your moves about millions, you gotta run a maze. So get the hint, no disturbances when I'm running plays. Needs and wants the strongest traits of the human nature. Disconnections from it all, some say it's elevation. But fuck that, we getting rich for my peoples who was crucified, tortured, and lynched. I'm a product of kings and queens and gods and earths and slaves anonymous. Freedom or death is what we used to shout. So why we still throwing parties inside a burning house? The devil's still trying to turn us out. History repeats what you refuse to learn about. Accept your own and do for self. This life is all about health and wealth. My 12 jewels keep me focusing, yeah. I'm on my square. Acknowledge God that's seen and heard everywhere. Accept your own and do for self. This life is all about health and wealth. My 12 jewels keep me focusing, yeah. I'm on my square. Acknowledge God that's seen and heard everywhere. I probably move to Ghana, get into politics to restore the motherland and legalize marijuana. One for the ancestors, two for the rituals. The reincarnated energy from the spiritual crossroads that seems near me. My thoughts travel like string theory, which allows me to do my thing yearly. Unorthodox artist when I started was hella critics. I went from pimping and macking to using metaphysics. I'm on some Dr. Delbert Blair shit, dropping heavy. Science, word up, I even blew trees with Dr. Sebi. And that was around the same time I was copping heavy. Couple homies fell victim that was not respected. I'm still a factor in my section, studying your lessons. From the essence, the wisdom is the most precious. Sajad Allahu to the ones who know. The hidden face that came from the west with new wine and golden scrolls. Accept your own and do for self. This life is all about health and wealth. My 12 jewels keep me focusing, yeah. I'm on my square. Acknowledge God that's seen and heard everywhere. Accept your own and do for self. This life is all about health and wealth. My 12 jewels keep me focusing, yeah. I'm on my square. Acknowledge God that's seen and heard everywhere.
All right, let's get started with the first item on the docket. First item on the docket is from Bloomberg.com. Coronavirus should finally smash the barriers to telemedicine. Under normal circumstances, internists Jenny Levy makes house calls, checking on patients with chronic conditions and serving as what she calls rolling urgent care. She works for Landmark Health, which offers supplemental home visits to people with Medicare Advantage plans and a high risk of hospitalization. When she joined Landmark, Livy heard that the company was working on a telemedicine app. 2.5 years later, she still hadn't seen anything. It turns out developing proprietary software that complies with privacy provisions of the US's Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, better known as HIPAA, is a time-consuming process. So far, the company has pilot programs running in only a couple of markets. Sorry. Now, with circumstances far from normal, Levy and her colleagues are suddenly seeing patients over FaceTime and WhatsApp. In response to the COVID-19 pandemic, federal regulations last month eased the stringent interpretation of HIPAA for telemedicine. Rather than special HIPAA-compliant platforms, healthcare providers operating in good faith can use everyday communications tools, so long as they aren't open to the public. FaceTime is fine. In other words, TikTok is not. The changes, says Levy, a college friend of mine, enabled us to start doing something we've been intended to do all along. Until recently, telemedicine seemed like one of those technological promises that was always in the future. While it sounded good in theory, it confronted economic barriers, regulatory hurdles, and resistance from doctors and patients. COVID-19 has radically changed the environment. For all its horrors, the pandemic provides an opportunity to cut through some of the red tape that stymies medical progress. To keep patients out of the waiting rooms and limit the spread of the disease, physicians, insurers, and state and federal regulators are pushing the rapid expansion of technologies once confined into niches and optimistic press releases. In the US, regulatory barriers have fallen, reimbursement rates have risen, and skeptical physicians are comfortable with video consultations. Doctors, patients, and businesses are having to change the way they think about telemedicine. If we learn the right lessons and avoid reverting to the status quo once COVID-19 is brought under control, the result could be better care at lower costs without eroding the already shaky finances of primary care physicians. Take the relaxation of the HIPAA rules. When the privacy law was passed by Congress in 1996, nobody was thinking about how it would apply to FaceTime visits. We were living in the world of fax machines, letters, and phone calls. The technologies HIPAA still favors absent a crisis. The emergency response reveals just how ill-founded the restrictions are. Letting doctors use widely available, even free software to examine patients at a distance vastly expands the number of practices that can incorporate telemedicine. You no longer have to be a large organization capable of building or buying a specialized system. You don't have to make telemedicine the backbone of your practice. Hiring crews of nurse practitioners to make calls from around the country. You can be a small clinic that wants to offer an occasional convenience to regular patients who are too sick or located too far away to easily come to the office. That in turn changes the political economy of the concept. Many primary care physicians have resisted telemedicine, supporting state restrictions that limit its scope. They justifiably feared the virtual consultations could skim off their profitable cases and put them out of business. If even small practices can't offer online visits, however, telemedicine becomes a way of expanding care and potentially increasing income. It's cheap and convenient, but no longer a substitute for an ongoing relationship with primary care physician. But if regulators later demand a return to the old rules of telemedicine platforms, warns Grady Gibbs, a technology consultant who admits he's self-interested since his clients are primary care practices. That will kill telemedicine, not kill it dead, but it will make the rollout much more difficult because the small, especially independent PCP office, one doc maybe one doctor in the mid-level is not going to be able to go out there and get access to a good platform that's HIPAA compliant. This is true. All right, I don't know what's going on with this. Regulation isn't the only barrier to widespread telemedicine. The single biggest thing that probably has held back deployment is, as is often the case, reimbursement, says Steve Spearman, Senior Director with Huron Consulting Group, who specializes in healthcare issues. Here too, the current crisis has changed the status quo. Medicare, which used to pay a much lower rate for telemedicine when it reimbursed it at all, is now covering a wide range of telemedicine services at the same reimbursement rates as an in-person offering. Private insurers are following voluntarily or by demand from state regulators. That equal treatment likely won't continue once the pandemic passes, but it sets a precedent for how to think about telemedicine. It doesn't have to be a quick, cheap, and transient service offered by companies without bricks and mortar investments in local clinics. It could also serve as an addition to primary care, especially for patients with chronic conditions, if reimbursement rates reflect the clinic overhead. Gibbs makes an analogy to how restaurants and bars are regulated differently depending on whether serving alcohol is their primary business or an adjunct to it. Doctors who offer telemedicine to existing patients as a convenience could get higher reimbursements, he suggests. While if you operate the big call center, then maybe your reimbursement is just dirt cheap. And it becomes something that only gets used in the off hours or perhaps by patients without primary care doctors. That to me would be a great way to thread the needle, because you've got to protect the family practitioner. We don't want local doctors to disappear or to fight the advance of new technologies. Even before COVID-19, Medicare has changed its reimbursement policies to encourage a particularly promising form of telemedicine, regularly monitoring patients with chronic conditions, including diabetes, hypertension, and congestive heart failure. In 2018, a primary care doctor who sent a patient home with equipment to take regular readings had to personally spend 30 minutes a month going over results with the patient to receive reimbursement from Medicare, which paid nothing for the equipment. And the monthly payment was a paltry $59. No doctor is going to do 30 minutes of their own time plus capital equipment to make $59, Gibbs says Gibbs. So there is no adoption. In 2019, however, Medicare changed its policies. In industry jargon, it unbundled the code, offering a one-time setup fee and a monthly equipment rental in reimbursement average of $66 nationally. It also allowed doctors to delegate the monthly checkups to staff and cut the time required to 20 minutes. We go from $59 for 30 minutes of the doctor's time to $52 for 20 minutes of the staff's time, plus 60 something for the equipment itself, says Gibbs. That made the idea profitable for primary care practices. Starting this year, the doctor can hire a third party to analyze the data and alert the practice of any warning signs. The result is significantly greater adoption of telemedicine. Instead of measuring blood pressure twice a year during in-person checkups, for instance, patients take their readings every day. Down the road, wearable technology will make it possible to continuously monitor at-risk patients. The world that we're headed to, says Gibbs, is your PCP going to know what's going on with their health 24/7 and will then only intervene when there's a problem. Gibbs, whose firm analyzes data for doctors and makes money by renting them the monitoring equipment, recounts the recent experience of training a small practice that brought in 10 patients to set up with monitors. 3 of them turned out to have such high readings that the nurse immediately walked them back to see the doctor. One man's systolic blood pressure reading tapped 200, where 120 is considered normal. He was 4 months away from his next office visit. So what happens to him in the next 4 months? He strokes out, he passes out, falls, breaks a hip, because of the high blood pressure. Telemonitoring allows early detection of changes that might otherwise lead to hospitalization. That saves both lives and money. By forcing doctors to think about how to best serve patients remotely, COVID-19 has encouraged greater adoption of telemonitoring. It also taught patients who would never have used online services, such as Dr. Libby's elderly clientele, how to reach their doctors remotely. When the crisis is over and in-person visits are again easy to manage, these habits will remain. With the right regulation and reimbursement policy, telemedicine can become part of regular healthcare in the United States, a complement rather than a substitute for hands-on practice. This is very true. We talked about this probably back in December. And telemedicine, we talk about Black people getting into healthcare, but telemedicine is the closest thing that you can do right now to go from 0 to 60 in healthcare. You don't need to be a doctor. You don't need to be even have a master's degree. You can get into this even at the community college level. So what we're saying here is that telemedicine has a lot of opportunity available in this. Telepsych, helping people with psychiatric issues through FaceTime and WhatsApp and these other Skype and these other remote applications. So there's going to be an explosive market. We talked about this back in December with Dr. Phoenix, shout out to Dr. Phoenix, that this market is going to explode beyond 2020. We were predicting by 2022, you'll probably see, big changes in the market from the application perspective. But now you're starting to see during the pandemic is it's the right time now. Nobody really anticipated that this was going to happen. So now everybody's jumping on board. Now's the perfect opportunity to switch careers and get into telemedicine and work remotely from home. So this is the type of stuff that, Black people should be focused on, because this is the area where opportunities are. So. Mr. Mizugu, what's going on? Boomer, Hooked, Yo, Gab, Real Conversations, peace to you, and Dr. Phoenix, good evening to you as well. So telemedicine is where you want to be if you want to get into healthcare right away and don't want to go through the rigorous programs that's out there. There is an opportunity for telemedicine. All right, next item on the docket is from Wired.com. From diagnosis to holistic patient care, machine learning is transforming healthcare. So we're going to stay with the healthcare perspective for a quick second. Let me expand this out. Picture family members escorting a shaky elderly relative into the hospital emergency department after a fall down the stairs. The patient is complaining of a headache, but a crisis doesn't look imminent. It's a Friday, a busy night in the local ER. There are 85 patients already on the radiologist's work list and a likely 2-hour wait before the patient's massively dangerous pulmonary embolism is discovered on the scans. That is, until now, after years of digitizing patient records and leveraging the cloud, the healthcare industry has created a massive and still growing pool of data. That data, used by analytical tools and increasingly machine learning, can drive everything from streamlining hospital workflows to promoting early detection of cancer or a pulmonary embolism. Digitization was really the first step, says Ryan Hamilton, Senior Vice President of Population Health for the global electronic health record giant Cerner Corp. The real power is in how you get second order effects out of the digitization. Companies like Cerner, Aladoc, and Artis are taking advantage of Amazon Web Services, high-speed, high-volume data storage, processing, and retrieval in the cloud, and machine learning tools to develop and apply machine learning algorithms, driving positive outcomes for patients and medical staff alike. The rise of machine learning algorithms in healthcare. Hamilton says now that machine learning, oh, somebody's trying to get on. Hamilton says now that machine learning has proven to be a valuable resource for healthcare providers, the next step is scaling the creation of intelligence and is integration back into the workflow at this point of decision making. Cerner itself is building complex analytical tools that draw on the volumes of secure, anonymized patient data it already has access to, medical diagnosis and treatment outcomes, financial outcomes from claims and coding, billing tools, and predictive hospital staffing models, and more. Take, for example, an ER like the one the embolism patient visited. Facilities across the U.S. struggle with staffing challenges. With one of its machine learning algorithms, Cerner can draw on historical data to predict patient volumes and staff the ER accordingly, days in advance. The proactive algorithm helps ensure that doctors and nurses aren't stretched thin during their shifts and that patients are seen more quickly and receive quality care. Cerner hopes to leverage rapidly advancing machine learning through Amazon SageMaker to explore additional applications using its anonymized HIPAA-compliant records. AWS has given us access to tools and techniques, whether we are basic building blocks or complex ecosystems like SageMaker. Historically, that would have been things we had to invest in and invent on our own, Hamilton says. Still, Hamilton says, Cerner won't be able to build all the algorithms the market needs. The company already works with partners to build machine learning models within the Cerner ecosystem. To truly see impact at scale, however, he sees a need for a broader collaboration. Luckily, Cerner is far from the only company using AWS machine learning capability to develop healthcare models. Developing speed and accuracy in machine learning models is an exciting application of the technology. Think again of that elderly patient who was waiting for the results of his CT scan. Smart radiology startup iDoc would accelerate the review process. The company's deep learning algorithm draws on knowledge from millions of past records to accurately identify the growing embolism, then immediately places a red flag on the patient's images in the ED radiology queue. Rather than sifting through the scans in the chronological order, the anomaly is pushed to the top and the patient is rushed to critical care. Everything improves if you get to that patient in time, says iDoc CEO Eli Wallach. Now deployed in hundreds of facilities worldwide, the iDoc technology has already seen measurable results. At a major East Coast medical center, machine learning applied to CT images reduced lengths of stay by 3 to 4 months, by 3/4 of a day. And it reduced time spent in the ED by 59 minutes. A similar perspective study reduced the turnaround time of CT scans for intracranial hemorrhages from 53 minutes to 46 minutes. In addition to being life-saving for patients, this kind of support is solely needed by doctors as well. Limited staff in radiology departments in particular can cause strain, but some 65% of doctors across disciplines report feeling overworked. Machine learning tools can alert doctors to anomalies in scans and flag possible diagnosis for doctors to review, saving doctors valuable time in the review process. Arteris, another groundbreaking firm using AWS to build and host machine learning algorithms in the health, is basing its entire platform to help doctors to be more efficient with their review and diagnosis of patient conditions. The company spent years in development of a powerful viewer interface for medical professionals to access medical images, run AI models within a clinical workflow, and do comparative analysis. While the platform has a wide variety of technologies at work through AWS to improve the doctor's workflow, machine learning is improving the diagnostic imaging process. Artists began exploring diagnostic applications of machine learning with heart defects in newborns and young children. These anomalies were previously detected through ultrasound, which offered only partial views and couldn't calculate blood flow and abnormalities. Abnormalities. Using AWS machine learning and cloud instances, the platform easily handles the massive data crunching needed to create and compare useful pictures of blood flow. Cardiac analysis time has been cut from 40 minutes to 6 minutes. Artists then explored applications of machine learning diagnostics to cancer, specifically lung cancer. Historically, radiologists would painstakingly look through the scans to try to differentiate nodules in the lung from cancerous lesions. With AWS, a new image is compared to hundreds of thousands of similar cases almost instantaneously to identify those nodules, leading to greater accuracy and productivity. Professionals can then work within the system to access multiple views from multiple time points and see likely growth models for nodules over the time automatically. More than 100 hospitals and image centers around the world now use Arteris seamlessly in their imaging workflow. By combining the power of AI and the AWS cloud, everyone around the world can have a chance at early stage cancer diagnosis and an increased chance of survival, says Arteris founder. With thousands of AI models created around the globe and no easy way to deploy them into the clinical workflow, the Arteris platform enables these to be deployed via a simple web browser. Arteris is building a world where clinical care is data-driven, intelligent, and patient-focused. That's very good. All three companies working with machine learning through AWS agree. This is only the beginning. While they've accessed unprecedented levels of scale through AWS machine learning, there's plenty of work still to come in applying machine learning's success in diagnosis in other areas of healthcare. Hamilton envisions machine learning creating more opportunities for patients to have productive conversations with their healthcare providers. The company is currently employing natural language processing, NLP technology that could free doctors from entering data into their laptops by intelligently listening to the dialogue in the exam room. The NLP model can take notes and pull up relevant test results or images. Background applications might surface alternative diagnosis for the doctor based on millions of records. And the care doesn't end when the visit is over. Back at home, the patient might receive interactive prompts. Did you fill your prescription? Would it help if we delivered it? Remote monitoring or wearable technology could congratulate the patient for reaching 3,000 daily steps, or warn case managers that rapid water weight gain indicates pending heart failure. The goal, Hamilton said, is trying to get a conversational healthcare workflow, not a visit-oriented, venue-oriented workflow. While those possibilities continue to drive excitement around machine learning, companies agree that the progress to date is gratifying, especially when it can save a life. Wallach says he's continuously motivated by the direct messages he gets from doctors on a weekly basis, including a recent one about ER patient with a massive pulmonary embolism. Hey, the doctor texts, I thought you would be glad to know that iDoc just saved one patient's life. That's actually pretty dope. We talked about this before about AI, machine learning, deep learning, telemedicine. We did go over that type of stuff. We got Dr. Phoenix on the panel. What's going on?
How you doing, brother? Good evening. Sorry about that.
I'm good.
I
saw you.
Yeah. No, I mean, now is a great time if you got a background in IT, even folks with clinical backgrounds. I mean, because of the current situation, in light obviously of dealing with the coronavirus, I mean, what you're seeing now is a very heavy utilization of telemedicine across the entire spectrum of the healthcare system.
Mm-hmm.
So, and so essentially, I mean, right now, some of the places that I know, some of the places that I worked at in the past, yeah, you're seeing wholesale spectrum. Uh, people are being triaged using telemedicine. People are being just going. They're being able to discuss some of, if they have symptoms, let's say, of the coronavirus, maybe some mild symptoms. They're able to have that conversation with their provider, and again, their provider is able to make a decision on whether or not this is something that they need to come into a hospital for, or this is something that they can manage on their own. And so, I mean, obviously there's room for Black folks to get in at all levels. You don't necessarily have to be the provider. You can very much be involved, like someone with your background in cybersecurity. I mean, again, we're seeing this as part of the problem where where, for example, the utilization of, let's say, the Zoom technology. I mean, a lot of school systems across the country have been banning it because of potential security concerns, especially as it pertains to, students and young people and stuff like that. So, even being involved with telemedicine at the cybersecurity level, being involved with people who help to design the software. I mean, this is a booming industry. And again, prior to the coronavirus, we're talking about an industry that was growing at a rate of about 27-30% every year.
Yep.
So I mean, this is not going anywhere. If anything, the current situation has just accelerated the use and the adaptation of this technology.
Mm-hmm.
And now the only thing I will say about telemedicine, I mean, there's a lot of legalese involved, because now if you're dealing with patients, for example, that are across state lines, you have to go through there's some licensing issues. You might be able to do it in one state, but maybe not in another state. And then, that there's a lot of legalese involved. So, again, if you're someone in law, paralegal, or a lawyer, I mean, there's a space for this particular industry for people to get in at all levels, in all areas, because there is a lot of legal issues tied up within the whole telemedicine industry, because it is about licensing what you can do in one state versus another. Who can you see? What can you see them for? And radiology, because I know the article was talking about radiology specifically. I mean, this has been one of the major areas where telemedicine has been certainly been applied and continue to be applied, and being and really being accelerated in that area. That ophthalmology, these are some of the principal specialties within medicine that certainly stand to have a huge amount of AI involved with it. And so, you think about someone like a radiologist that may look like, I know they mentioned the CT scans, which stands for computer tomography scans, and how you're able to, and what that does is that CT scan takes a bunch of X-rays, and it puts it in, what it does, it puts it into one picture, but it allows you to get a better picture of what's going on within the blood vessels, the bones, the soft tissues, and stuff like that. And ironically enough, I've seen some CT scans of individuals who have recovered from the coronavirus, and they're absolutely frightening, because what's happening is that even folks who recover from the coronavirus, many of them have shown significant lung damage, where the virus itself has punched a number of small holes into the lungs. And so these actual images show up on the CT scan. That's why CT scans have been kind of heavily used in this whole process of diagnosing folks with coronavirus and such like that. And so, and also looking at the progression, and maybe even long-term lasting effects, even for those who have managed to recover. So at every level, telemedicine is going to be utilized,
Mm-hmm.
and the current situation just only accelerated the process. What we know of just at the beginning of this year in January is no more.
Mm-hmm.
That's gone.
Mm-hmm.
Those sort of some of the conventional methods we've seen and approaches to dealing with medicine and stuff like that, and the healthcare system, a lot of that is gone. We're not going back to
Yeah.
that. And the principal reason is because one pandemic has literally brought the world to its knees.
Yeah. Yeah. Everybody's scrambling. And you and I talked about this in the past on one of the healthcare live streams we did before, that you can't just go to school for just healthcare anymore. You got to pair that up with some kind of computer science or information systems. You got to be multi-talented in these areas. The ability to write some kind of code or even understand the code that goes into some of these machine learning, artificial intelligence, and nursing is going to be critical.
Yeah, absolutely. You have these biomedical informatics programs that have been designed specifically for clinicians, so for pharmacists, nurses, nurse practitioners, physicians, healthcare providers across the board. You're seeing that these programs have been designed to give folks a good foundation within the areas of computer science, computational genetics and genomics, computer science. And you're seeing this massive convergence between the medical sciences and computer sciences. And this was only a matter of time. And so right now, these are some of the major areas of growth. And right now, the clinicians who do have backgrounds, especially, because I know I've met quite a few physicians who, for example, used to be engineers.
Mm-hmm.
And so I met some that even had computer science degrees. And so, these folks are in very good positions to take advantage of a lot of this new technology that's being utilized right now. Again, you're talking about AI and machine learning, all that. A lot of folks don't understand this is what they've been using to track the coronavirus to begin with. They've been using AI. They've been plugging these things into these models. That's how they've been able to predict a lot of what we've been experiencing for the last few months. Is that this is where you're seeing a heavy application of machine learning, computer science, language, neural language, what they call it, neural networks. Excuse me. And so you're seeing this massive application across the board of a lot of technologies that obviously get discussed here at the Black Brain Trust. And so again, what Black folks don't understand is that a lot of these traditional jobs, these service jobs, these gig jobs, they're done. They're gone.
Yeah.
They're never coming back. I was just reading an article yesterday that was talking about, one of the major GameStop, for folks who game or whatever, they're pretty much done. The coronavirus has pretty much put them all out of business for the most part. And there's a lot of these chain stores or retail stores or whatever, many of them going out of business. They're done. They will never be able to recover from this event. And we've only been experiencing this at its current level for about a month. And that's been enough to put a major strain on not just this economy, but really this microeconomy in which Black people exist in.
I want to answer this question. You're saying GameStop and these said they're never coming back again. Why is that?
Well, GameStop has always been they kind of always been on the rocks. Anybody that follows that industry knows that pretty much digital sales and Amazon been eating their lunch. This was just the final nail in the coffin for the most part.
Yeah, because brick and mortars can't really compete with online sales in the same way. So people don't really go into stores all that much, especially GameStop. It's usually pretty empty in there.
Well, not even just that. If you got a PlayStation or Xbox, you can just buy the game from your home and just download it. You could be sitting on your couch and buy a game.
Yeah, I think stuff like that, yes, is going to get hit. But I think a lot of these other industries right now that are being shut down are going to come back because there's going to be some demand for it at some point in time. What how they'll come back, how quickly they'll come back, I don't know. Like right now, I've got a few stocks that I'm going to be lining up to buy, like Norwegian Cruise Lines, Carnival Cruise, and so forth. Those right now are dead in the water. But as soon as this thing starts to turn around and people feel a little bit more comfortable, those stocks are going to come back. So I'm waiting for
that I do agree with, B. But those are sort of a different. That's sort of a different.
I'm waiting for those to go low, and I'm gonna say this for all of you guys who listen to me with respect to keep your overhead low and your savings high, that there would be unique opportunities to get into, and really, it has come around faster than I thought it would have ever had. 35, 40 grand right now, if one has that kind of money, is going to put you into some very unique situations that you're not going to see, that you would have never seen before. And I'm talking about unique. So, and 35, 40 grand is not that much money. But
I agree with that. I do agree with that.
Certainly, if you put that together, or with a group, you guys can buy some properties, some multifamily dwellings, some things that you're going to have opportunities that you would never see before, because the real estate market is going to get hit hard. So I also want to say this, Dr. Phoenix, and ladies, with other people, in chaos comes a tremendous opportunity, and I want us to be thinking about that as well. Very important we're thinking this way.
You know, that's a very good point you make, because that goes to something when I was on the panel with Mike a few days ago that I spoke about. You know, there is tremendous opportunity now. You know, you're talking about the cruise lines and really this sort of this vacation industry. I think for the most part, cruise lines, I mean, I've been on a number of cruises, so I know for a fact, you know, black people are sometimes the passengers, usually not the workers. They tend to hire a lot of foreign nationals in that respect. However, I will say this. I do believe that, you know, and I'll use myself as a personal reference. You know, I have like a Vanguard account, and I can tell you right now, over just in a month alone, my Vanguard account has taken a serious hit. But I do expect it, you know, things will rebound and things will probably be better than they were before. But you know, that's just one area where I can personally attest to. Well, yeah, I'm taking a hit, but you know, again, I can weather that storm, and I expect that will bounce back. But I think, you know, a lot of the real rudimentary menial jobs that most black people find themselves in today, I don't think those jobs are coming back. I really don't. You know, there will be a space for a handful of folks, but as a whole, to the scale of what it was prior to this pandemic, I don't think it would be that case anymore.
And why do you say that? Just a question, because I'm just interested in your views on this. Go ahead.
Well, I just think for the most part, what's going on is that you're seeing really a fundamental shift in what this economy needs. And right now, sort of a lot of the areas where black folks find themselves in, you really don't need it. They can essentially be replaced by a lot of stuff. I know of some paralegals right now that are out of work because you don't need it, because you got stuff like you got stuff like Legal Shield, you got a lot of these online services that, you know, folks can do this from their own home. You don't really need a lot of stuff, and not to say that you don't need paralegals in general, but even some of the more basic stuff, a lot of the security jobs, a lot of these restaurant hospitality jobs, I think a lot of these companies that they found themselves really exposed and open, you know, to a lot of risk because of this coronavirus. And I don't think that they're gonna they're gonna be looking for ways to figure out how can we remove as much of the human element as possible.
Well, I know this. We got Trump talking about opening things up by April the 30th. That might be too soon.
Bad idea. Horrible idea.
Yeah, I think that might be too soon. But a lot of companies right now are really screeching to kind of get their doors back open and starting getting people around again and so forth. And you know, this $1,200 stimulus is not going to do it really for them. So they really need to get people back in the stores, buying stuff, and getting people back to work and working and moving the economy right now. And I'm seeing where a lot of companies are going to almost start to, you know, they're going to start hiring back. You know, some restaurants are going to start opening up again. They're going to start hiring back their cooks. They're going to start bringing people in. They're like, fuck it, we got to do what we got to do. So I don't know if things are going to be that dour as you're saying, and me having the, you know, a real good overview of the economy and how things really work here in this country and how money works. I don't know if I necessarily buy everything you're saying. I kind of don't, but I do think that there are going to be things that are going to get hit down the line. But as of right now, with the desperation that's going on, they're looking to get people back to work as fast as possible, because if people don't start working again and this thing really goes down, then I think we'd be looking at a full on crash. And
well, here's the problem. I think no matter which way we go, we're already looking at that. That
Oh, say
that
that again. I just wasn't finished. I don't want you to
oh,
talk
sorry.
over. I'm just saying we have to see exactly how this thing is really going to kind of wash out from a real economy standpoint, from a real economic standpoint. Not to say that what you're saying is not true, because I certainly agree with a lot of what you're talking about, especially going down the line, and no question about it. But for the immediate short term, I don't know. I think the economy, these guys are looking to jumpstart things, and they can't jumpstart things with nobody working. So that's the big issue, in getting people moving back into these stores and getting around and starting to make things happen again. I think April 30th is definitely far too early of a time, but this is what they're pushing for. So and I think I agree with you. I think that might be a bad idea, but that's the level of desperation that we're at right now. Anyway, go ahead, my brother. Go ahead.
No. I do agree with that. I think my point of what I'm getting at is simply that, yes, short term that helps people, but I think I'm not even looking at the short term, because this is the part of problem why we're in the situation we're in now. Not just as Black people, but as a country in general, because there's all this short term preparation, and people never understood that. How the hell can a virus that's no more lethal than the flu can bring the entire world to its knees? And that's all it took. And I think the problem with Black folks, and the problem why Black folks have found themselves so wholly exposed in this situation, is simply because there's nothing but short-term preparation.
Yeah.
There's never the sense of longevity and understanding, how do I put myself in the best possible position regardless of whatever's going on in this world. And I think that's the part where Black folks get short-sighted on, because everything is about the short term. It's about getting the bag, and it's about this. Look, you got folks out here that have got college degrees, man, that are making 80, 90 grand a year, and now they're not making nothing.
Yeah, you've got desperation going on. There's problems, and what people are doing is they're going with their vacation time, and then they're going with their sick days, and they're trying to take that as far as possible, and then that's only going to leave them maybe a month, so maybe 6 weeks, and then boom, it's that to $400 a week or something like that on unemployment. So this is very problematic. Very problematic.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And I even think even the government's approach to it has been, if anything, and the reason I'm saying what I'm saying is that even the government approach to it has been very much you're on your own as an individual. You've been seeing this back and forth over a month now between the states and the current administration, where the states are saying, well, we don't have this, we don't have these supplies, we don't have these ventilators, we don't have this PPE. And he said, and you got the administration saying, well, it's not our job to do this. But yet you cut the NIH and the CDC, and you get rid of the Office of Pandemics, which is part of the National Security Council.
You see what you just said? You see how bad? I mean, I don't know how he's going to turn the corner on that one on the election day, because he is so vulnerable on that. He got blood on his hands. So that's all he's got. He got a lot of blood on his hands, man.
Well, regardless if he's going to do it or not, no one in that no one in the political theater has any really sort of solution to this. There's nothing.
And that's exactly the problem.
I think the answer to this was a faster reaction, because we were going to have a problem, but the reaction had to be there. And what Dr. Phoenix has brought up, and what me and some of my people really been debating the same thing, is the fact that you had the pandemic shut down, you had all the cuts with the CDC and everything else like that. The early warning system was taken out. So had we had better warning time or a little more lead time on this, we may have been able to do a bit better. I think if people were alerted more, and people were doing safety standards, we had this whole safety standard piece, and all that was put in place a lot earlier, because the pandemics and all this, these guys are the ones who's supposed to eyeball this and then really start to jump out front on this thing. You didn't have that. You had these absolute square-headed white nationalist racists, savages sitting up in there, dumb as fuck, talking crazy and saying that this wasn't even a problem. They were saying that wasn't even a problem, and this was December, January.
Well,
Going into February, they were saying this wasn't even a problem. So I mean, so we had a real poor reaction. It was a horrific reaction on this, and it was very slow. Coming around to it now, but had we been on point back in November, December, and people really giving us a really good heads up on this, I think we would have we would have seen we would have had a better result. I think we would have had a better result. Anyway, yeah. Go ahead, family. Go ahead.
no, did you want to say something, Mike?
No, I was just going to go on to the next article because we kind of running behind.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. All right, next item on the docket is from TechCrunch.com. FDA clears N95 decontamination process that could clean up to 4 million masks per day. Interesting. The U.S. Food and Drug Administration has provided an emergency use authorization for a decontamination process provided by a company, Advanced Sterilization Products, ASP, that could see as many as 4 million N95 respirators per day sterilized for reuse. That's a significant potential dent in the ongoing shortage of supplies faced by medical professionals and frontline workers at healthcare facilities. This decontamination process would open up reuse of N95 masks originally designed for single use, and it uses vaporized hydrogen peroxide gas to clean the respirators. ASP's Steroid series sterilization machines, which are covered under the EUA, are in use around 6,300 hospitals already. And there are around 9,930 in operation across the US. I don't know why this is. The FDA has previously cleared another similar system for N95 decontamination, Batil's vaporized hydrogen peroxide process. This new clearance greatly expands the reach and potential volume of decontamination that's possible and should pave the way for others to follow. Duke University was early in the calling of this process to be used on N95 respirators after demonstrating that it is safe and effective and available on a range of equipment already in use in biocontaminant labs and other medical facilities. So far, all of these clearances are EUAs, but this does seem like an area where the measures could become more permanent following the pandemic in order to better prepare healthcare systems in case of other emergencies. Technologies for emergency reuse of single-use equipment and other ways to extend the viable life of crucial medical gear seems like a wise area of further investment and study. So, I feel sorry for those, those institutions who threw away the N95 mask already, not realizing that this, they can be repurposed. How many masks were already tossed away? Probably by the millions. Oh, my mic was on. I didn't even realize that. Shoot.
No. I think part of this is that this is kind of a reflection of the fact that we were not prepared for this pandemic. And again, personal protective equipment has been in such short supply. I mean, I don't need to reiterate the fact that you can just go on social media and you see folks improvising using all kinds of materials to make masks, face shields, gowns, some type of body covering to protect yourself. And N95 masks, they've been in short supply long before none of these stay-at-home orders were ever put in place. I mean, the N95 mask, I remember you guys did a stream maybe back in January, late January or something, that was talking about this and about how Amazon was clamping down on folks who were reselling these masks at exorbitant prices. They were reselling these masks at like $300, $400 a piece.
Yep.
So I mean, this is part of the problem, and goes back to what I was saying previously, is that Again, people don't see the need for public health and prevention because what it does is you don't see it. But when you need it, you do see it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's the thing, shout out to Complex Design. I mean, he brought up the whole entire hemp, hemp-based, agriculture manufacturing and stuff like that. And could Black people have possibly gotten into this market by creating hemp-based, filtered masks? I don't know. This is where the brainstorming comes in. But instead, folks want to shuck and jive and talk about, variations in of a certain social space, and it's like, no, we have bigger things on deck right now that need to be attended to. I was reading the article this morning. 2/3 of cases of COVID in the South are Black people actually dying from it.
I can
Black people are getting hit
the
hardest. Hold a second. Black people are getting hit the hardest, and I do. Dr. Phoenix, I believe, I'm thinking, I've heard a lot of people talk, but I believe you spoke about this earlier.
I've been speaking about this forever. I was saying this before even before the experts were saying this.
I heard you say that. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, you're right, because I've been saying this before the experts were saying this. I was just in Louisiana and Houston 2 weeks ago. In fact, it took me like 3 days to get up out of both because my flight got canceled like 3 times in each place. So at the end of the day, you look at Louisiana, 70% of the people that die for the coronavirus, Black. Chicago, 70% of people that die from the coronavirus, Black. In Chicago, Black people about 1/3 of the population. Louisiana, Black people about 1/3 of the population. Obviously, where you're at, Nagon, in New York, you got Black folks. There, it's kind of been a mix between both Latinos and Black people.
Black and Hispanics been getting cold hammered, and they got an epidemic going on right now in the Tombs or down here in Rikers and so forth. That's absolutely horrifying, and they're trying to keep quiet.
They keep it quiet about the prison issue in general because there are reports coming out of the Cook County jail in Chicago, which if people are not, I know if brothers in the chat are familiar with Cook County from Chicago, that is the largest jail system in the country. They have at least 500 cases of the coronavirus, 500 cases of people infected in the county jail in Chicago. And you're not even hearing a peep about it.
One of these dudes snuck in a cell phone and showed the guy next to him and in the cell next to him dying. So
I saw that video.
So there's a genocide. They were trying to call it genocide going on. People are just not talking about it. But we're talking about. But here we are on the manosphere. People with COVID fever talking crazy. No. COVID psychosis, and they're talking crazy. But this shit's hitting us in our communities very hard, and it's frightening because with this level of penetration in our community, it's going to be, if it's going to really have to burn itself out, I mean, we're talking about many of us getting exposed, and
it has to burn itself out. That's why,
and the death rate is going to go up even more. So that's what's terrifying. But anyway, go ahead.
No, you're absolutely right. That's the problem, because again, and this is why why every healthcare expert out here, every healthcare provider expert out here is saying that we're talking about opening up the country back at the end of April. No. We're in a country where people need to understand there are 330 million people in this country. You have less than 1% of the total population that has been tested. Less than 1%. We're talking about Germany, places like Germany and Asian countries that have tested anywhere between 4 to 10% of their population almost. In fact, I think the area with the highest who's done the most tests, believe it or not, is actually the United Arab Emirates. They've had the highest level of testing because they're already familiar with it because they experienced MERS, Middle East Respiratory Syndrome, which is another variation of the coronavirus. So they already understood what it takes to get this under control. But here in the country, we're talking about reopening this country in a moment where testing has been in short supply. You're only testing either healthcare, either healthcare, frontline healthcare workers, or you're testing people that are sick enough that require hospitalization.
Yes, it's pretty scary. I mean, what's
Testing
going?
for the layperson is not happening. You don't even know who's had it and who's recovered from it. But we're talking about reopening this country, and you're gonna make a bad situation worse because you're gonna throw kerosene on it.
Yeah, I mean, and they're trying to push to this to happen. This is coming, and this, as you know, the corporate structure runs this country. So this is coming from the corporations. It's coming from them, and they want people back in the stores. They want people back in their restaurants. They want people back in their, back in their businesses. Transact.
Small businesses. Those are for the small businesses. So most of your businesses that have online presence, they don't care.
Well, you talking about the Amazons and the big players. The big players are definitely not feeling it. Because most of the big players you have out here have a very strong online presence anyway. So most people buy online with them anyhow.
Yeah.
But some of these other companies, when I talk about some of these companies, I'm talking about the some of the bigger boys. Like I'm just talking about the cruise lines and so forth. These companies were very well run, hundreds of millions, billions of dollars. They've done very well, and now they're hurting. Now they are hurting, and what is holding up your community and your town, like in my town and others, some of the smaller kind of mid-sized businesses, they are they're panicking, man. They're panicking. They are panicking, and that's a problem. You have people who are quitting in some of these companies. They're leaving. They're quitting. They're walking out. And they're stepping off. My oldest brother, he actually is a regional manager for for a supermarket chain, and he's got some real problems. He's got people walking off the job.
Mhm.
People stepping off out of there, stepping off. That's what I'm saying. I don't know about people not having jobs now, because some people are just terrified. They're leaving. They're walking out. And would sooner take unemployment than risk their lives. That's what people are doing.
The busing, the busing in or the public transportation sector are bleeding at this point, because they're not actually having people go through the front door. They're actually having them go through the rear door so that they stay far from the driver, from contaminated. So they're not even paying for this.
My boy Anthony, he works at Trader Joe's in the city, and he called me from 135th Street Station and said, Carl, I mean, look at what's going on here, CB. Look what's up, man. This is dystopian. Dystopian. Said it was dystopian. City, 135th Street, 7th Avenue. Like it was like that movie The Day After, or what's the name, Will Smith and Legend. You know what I mean? Walking around, and there's nobody around. I mean, it was scary. So
Go ahead, Dr. Phoenix.
No, I was just gonna say, no, I agree with what both you brothers are saying. I think at the end of the day, what the fundamental problem is that, and this kind of goes back to the initial conversation with the first article. Again, it should be very clear right now. The government has picked winners and losers, and this is all being dictated by the corporate structure in this country that runs the show. Because again, it's very clear the current administration is ignoring the advice of some of the top medical experts in the country, in the world. He's already talking about, he put out a tweet earlier today talking about firing your top infectious disease doc. This is the gentleman that runs the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases.
Mm-hmm.
And you're talking about
well,
firing.
look who's put Trump in there. Yeah. Of course he's going to think about doing that, Dr. Phoenix. This man has denied global warming. I mean, this guy closed down the Office of Pandemics, as you had mentioned before. I heard that he closed down the Office of Pandemics, and they jumped in his face about it. He said he didn't know nothing about it. So very horrifying.
Yeah, they've been denying that they've been denying that since those reports came out back in the middle part of last year.
This guy's insane. But the corporate entity that runs him, that runs the party, that runs his party, that runs him, runs the Democratic Party as well, runs him, and who are putting gas in his tank. They're telling him to push this, man. That's and he's going to have to do what they tell him. That's just where this thing is at.
I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that's not what's happening, but what I am saying is that it's very obvious that they're picking winners and losers, and more importantly, there seems to be an acceptable level of pain and death that they're willing to deal with.
Absolutely, because this is not about people; it's about money, and that's it's not about people; it's about money right now, and that's where we're seeing the capitalist system, and we're seeing its real holes here, and folks are gonna have to look at this and say, okay, this is what we're involved in, and this is what's really being pushed. All right, well, we got to look at this. So this is capitalism. We're all part of it. I'm not speaking against it or anything at this stage. I'm just saying this is what we're looking at. And this is not about people right now. It's about money, and that's where we're at. That's the crossroads where we're at. And you are absolutely right. It's going to be about how many deaths will be acceptable underneath this type of situation, and that's pretty scary.
And look, I think just and this again goes back to the initial conversation where, in my honest opinion, I'll tell you something that a mentor told me years ago. My mentor, when I was an undergrad, told me that, every family should have at least one nurse and one physician. She told me that. And this is why. It's situations like this that prove why that is so true when she told me that years ago. Mm-hmm. Because there's no reason why Black people should not have a battalion of Black nurses and physicians who can do what needs to be done. And there's no reason why we shouldn't have our own healthcare infrastructure that can deal with some of the issues. Because again, when we're talking about the fact that in many of these cities, many of these major cities in this country, Black people are overwhelmingly the number of deaths. I'm in goddamn Wisconsin. Most of the deaths here are Black people. Yes. A third of the people being diagnosed, more than a third of people being diagnosed here are Black people. Mm-hmm. In a state that's 93% white.
Well, we talked about this, that the close proximity of Black people, the short-term planning and short-term thinking, they were going to be impacted most. In fact, I was on Ramil's panel about a month or so ago and talked to a young gentleman who was on it who said the virus is bullshit. This is not real. This is not accurate. Blah, 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 blah. Okay. He said, I don't care about this. I'm just going to go about my merry way. Black people who think like that are always disproportionately the ones impacted by it.
And
some people were saying,
and that's why you've seen this campaign.
I was going to say this. Some people were saying that they had genes, that we had special genes that were going to protect us.
Yeah, true.
I was on a panel where a gentleman brought up that argument about a couple months ago. I was on a panel where a gentleman brought up that argument. I'm not going to say where, but this gentleman brought up an argument based on some alleged article or some doctors in Thailand talking about how Black folks had this special gene, but yet you look at these cities across this country, even in states where Black people are not even in single digits in terms of the damn population percentage, but your majority of the deaths.
And that shows you the state of your healthcare, the state of health, how the healthcare system is not serving us properly, and how the state of health of the Black community, which poor foods and so forth that we eat are adversely affecting us. And that's the ignorance that we have going on in our community in so many ways. Tremendous amount of ignorance.
One of the hardest things that's been very difficult for me in all this time I've been in healthcare. One of the most difficult things for me to do is to teach Black folks about what you eat and changing your lifestyle, especially brothers. I can get women to listen to me, but getting Black men to listen to me, they sound a lot like what Mike just referenced. Yeah. I'm gonna do my own thing. I don't believe in this. This is some white man stuff. Look, I don't know how much more evidence black folks can get. I don't give a damn how many folks and how many so-called black folks, because I've seen this crap come out of the mouths of some very well-known black people on YouTube are saying this shit too.
Mhm. Mhm.
And they're sitting here talking about some damn grand conspiracy. Ain't no damn grand conspiracy. What you're seeing is truly the convergence of public health, socioeconomic issues, and yes, white supremacy. Yes, it is that. But it's never one without the other.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think that's fairly accurate, and we have to look at this. I mean, once this pandemic, is over, we're gonna take a very, very, very honest look at what's really going on, and I think black people, we're gonna have to become very, very honest about where we're at, and and start pulling our heads out of our backsides and stop talking craziness, get out of some of this. Some of the psychosis we're in. I know we just can't walk out of it. We're gonna have to kind of do our own therapy and have our therapists work on us a little bit to come out of some of this. But this is life threatening, and we're not realistic about it. And I've just looked at just the manosphere and the reaction that we've had in the manosphere. We should be talking about this and the absolute insanity that we're on is it's frightening.
Yeah.
It's frightening, scary.
Yeah,
But anyway,
yeah,
I'm done.
Yeah, let me get to this article. This from fastcompany.com. These 8 maps show the massive drop in smog caused by coronavirus. As streets have emptied of traffic during the coronavirus crisis and airlines have cut flights, the changes have temporarily helped another public health crisis, air pollution. In the northeastern US, nitrogen dioxide pollution, the air pollution caused by internal combustion engines burning fossil fuels, fell 30% in March as lockdowns began. Los Angeles' usual smog has nearly disappeared. The same pattern have happened earlier in China and Italy as mobility slowed, factories shut down, and hazy skies cleared. Maps from Descartes Labs, a data analytics company, used satellite data to track the steep changes in air quality. In March and the first week of April, NO2 pollution fell around 19% in Seattle compared to the same period last year. In New York, it fell 22%, in Denver, 15%. In Los Angeles, NO2 pollution dropped 33%. As the virus spread around other parts of the world, some cities are seeing even steeper declines. In India, where 1.3 billion people are now under lockdown, the capital of New Delhi has seen 70% drops in both nitrogen dioxide pollution and PM 2.5, tiny particles of soot. Darker blue on the maps indicates more air pollution. There's a direct link between air pollution and the new coronavirus, since polluted air makes people more likely to have illnesses such as asthma and lung disease that make them at greater risk of dying from COVID-19. One recent study from researchers at Harvard's T.H. Chan School of Public Health suggests that areas that are even slightly more polluted than other areas will have more COVID-19 deaths. Air pollution is also linked to widespread deaths even without the coronavirus. The WHO estimates that around 7 million people die each year globally because of exposure to pollution. The current declines in pollution are temporary. In China, as factories have reopened and people have gone back to work, skies are becoming more polluted again. The same thing will happen in the United States, but the clearer skies are also a reminder of what's possible. It is also it is not surprising that air pollution has been reduced now, because we know why we have bad air normally. We just don't have the political will to change it, says Gretchen Goldman, a research director at the Union of Concerned Scientists. We already have all the tools we need that would allow us to have cleaner air all the time, irrespective of the pandemic and social distancing. We could be switching from coal to renewables. We could be adapting national standards for clean energy. We could get off fossil fuel subsidies. We could be electrifying more vehicles and allowing states to go further with their vehicle standards. We know what the solutions are. there's a chance, Goldman says, that the current respite from pollution might lead to support for change. When people see the world that could be, it is harder to take it away, she says. When people see how much easier it is to breathe outside, when you see that possibility, I think it will make it harder for decision makers to avoid taking steps to make this norm not the exception. So we covered an article, and it was actually a report that showed that Black communities are more disproportionately impacted by nitrogen dioxide pollution than white communities, mostly because, as Dr. Phoenix talked about in the past, many Black communities live closer to highways and expressways, which have a consistent stream of pollution flowing through their neighborhoods. So it's nonstop.
And more toxic wastes in our communities as well. And that's broken down by political lines, and this has been proven over time, but we got to look at that too, and that's adversely affecting us. So you bring up a really good point there, Mike, and there's also more toxic dumping and stuff like that in some of our neighborhoods that are in Black areas. That may not be just inner city, but more suburban, that are adversely affected as well.
Well, right. And so when we think about, in the South, and I was reading this morning, 2/3 of COVID cases are actually Black people dying from them. You have to take all this into consideration, that going into this, Black people were very much unprepared, underprepared, and understaffed and under-infrastructured. Or from an infrastructure standpoint, that there was nothing there to create a deterrence against this pandemic. In fact, they were put basically on the front lines without actually knowing they were on the front lines to begin with. And we've talked about, Dr. Phoenix has been on some of our healthcare talks talking about this extensively as to what some of these preventative measures can be taken into consideration. And yet we have, we are where we are right now, and Black people, for whatever reason, did not take this stuff seriously enough. Dr. Phoenix, you have anything to add to this?
Yeah, if you look at this mapping, you see where you see some of those deepest color blues. Just look at where they're at. Folks that can see this map, just take a good look at where you're seeing the deepest colors at on this map. Because these are all areas where you have sizable Black populations. And as you can see, most of them are Black.
Sitting right there, it sure is. Yeah.
And so again, it's not surprising that when you consider the fact that Black folks are in many respects leading in the mortality stats as it relates to coronavirus, as well as a number, as well as being in some cases being the majority of the newly diagnosed cases. Again, you're looking at really a convergence of many issues, not just sort of the coronavirus is opportunistic. And so you have an opportunistic infection, I'm just going to term it as that, versus, and then you have all these other socioeconomic and health issues. So you have issues around smog and vehicle emissions and all of that. And then you couple that with just in general, just the bad health of Black people. Plus you add on the fact that 50% of most Black people have no savings whatsoever. So they don't even have the means to weather this storm. And then you have more than 1/3 of Black children that are growing up in poverty. And now you see the situation you're seeing.
That's why we need a nationalized health system. We need a nationalized health system. We need a nationalized health system.
Be careful, Nagon. You may trigger some conservatives around here.
I don't give a fuck.
I have always said
give a fuck about them some bitches. We need a nationalized health system. Because it's about people. Anyway, I'm sorry.
I always in favor of a nationalized health system. Because I've spoken about this on the numerous times. I mean, I've always been in favor of it because, again, at the end of the day, what we're seeing here is that you're not seeing chronic health needs being met before something that can be opportunistic, like the coronavirus, comes along and take advantage of existing conditions within a particular population.
That's right. That's right. That's right. But remember, a nationalized health system is more about helping people as opposed to, benefiting corporations per se. So it's that's what we're talking about. And I believe that your national health is poor and you have people dying out. That also is that's a national security issue as well. And
Absolutely.
I don't know why people don't see that. It's scary. But many other more civilized countries that have this seem to understand that. Just look at Germany. I just wanted to tell people, look at Germany, look at their issue, look how they're dealing with it, look how many people are getting better. And you have to sit down and ask, how are they doing what's happening there and why are we having the problems we're having here? Very, very, very important to look at.
No, I absolutely agree. You know, it's ironic that the Office of Pandemics was a part of the National Security Council. And one would have to ask, why would they put something that's technically a public health related into a National Security Council office? That you know that
And it was more crazy. They shut it down, man. What's up with that, man?
Yeah, I know, but it also says that you would stick something like that that's related to public and global health within the realm of national security.
Right.
That lets you know exactly how they really view. And to something you said earlier, Nagon, about some of the early warnings, there were warnings going back to at least some of the leaked documents showing there were warnings going back to December, maybe even November.
They were November, or they were warning November
about warning the current administration that
that's exactly correct. And had we had a real office in place to really move on that, we could have started moving on that then. But you hit it right in the head. That's why when we talk about the this Office of Pandemics that was shut down, there's blood on this man's hands because those are the experts who can see this. Warnings were coming back from November before Thanksgiving. But anyway, that's very important. That didn't happen, and that's why we had a very poor response. And now Black people sitting here arguing over this dumbest shit on earth. We're getting hit the hardest. So that's why I say we're in a COVID kind of psychosis here because we're taking a lot of hits.
I do want to say something else in regards to this whole, what people think government can and cannot do. Let's just make something really clear here. The government has the ultimate authority. They can pick winners and losers. Whether liberals or conservatives want to believe that or not, they have the ultimate authority. And a good example of it is the reason why GameStop is just really got the nail put in their coffin for their business. Yep. The government shut them down. The government yanked their licenses. Yep. The government has been the one that has mobilized the auto industry to start producing ventilators and masks and other PPE. They're the only ones that have the ability and the power to do that. They're the only ones that can put out mandates to do that. Mm-hmm. And the reason why you've seen this back and forth for the past month between the states and the federal government is because exactly the states have very limited power and who they can enforce. They can only enforce things within their particular spectrum of power, only within their states.
Very good point.
They cannot do it at the national level. Only the government can.
Very good.
Had the government been prepared and understood, you cannot cut your CDC. You cannot cut the very organizations that are responsible to making sure that your country cannot be open to any issues involving biological entities that can totally cripple your economy, that can totally cripple your workforce, and more importantly, your fighting force. Because we're seeing how the coronavirus is running rampant through the U.S. military. Yeah. Only the government can control it.
And it is that's a very key piece because it's hurting our military. It's hurting men in the field. It's hurting its operations. This is very dangerous. But you have these knuckleheads who are sitting here and had a very poor response. I don't see how. I know you got these guys in here who are down for this MAGA dude, for the orange man. But I just don't see, man, where this guy's been competent in one of the most critical crises of all times, and how he gets another shot. I don't see it. I don't see it, man.
Yeah. Let me move on to this next article. Actually, I just wanted to make one point too as well. In World War II, they were turning out, bomber planes by the hour. You imagine how many parts go into a plane, and they were turning these things out by the hour. So let that sink into your brain of how they're having such difficulty building a mass, but they can build tanks in airplanes in mass.
Even the Production Act, the War Powers Production Act that that the current administrator instituted a few weeks ago, that was from the Korean War.
Mm-hmm.
So again, they've had these initiatives in place where the government can step in and force wholesale production in times of war. And believe it or not, this virus is a wartime effort.
Yep. I just saw an article a few minutes ago. Local brewery is going to be manufacturing masks as well, shutting down their brewery efforts, I guess, because they can't have any customers in there. So
yeah, I mean, but Mike, the point you bring up, about we were turning out. I just looked up. We were turning out a bomber every 4 hours. A fucking bomber.
Wow.
A bomber plane. A bomber aircraft.
Mm-hmm.
Fucking bomber. And we cannot turn out masks and gloves. And then when asking these guys to do it, and even when we talked about bringing up more ventilators, they were talking about bringing the ventilators, producing more ventilators at $40,000 a unit. And they were trying to jam the fucking joint. They were trying to literally gouge you like that. I mean, I'm telling you, that's why we have to nationalize this medical game. This shit we have right here is showing you it's not working. Our system, the way it is right now, the medical system and its adherents, they're not working. Got to nationalize some of this. Not all of it.
We've seen this before.
But we got to nationalize. This shit ain't working, man. I mean, bomber planes, and you can't produce freaking masks.
But we've seen this before. We've seen this in 2005 during Hurricane Katrina, where the country could not galvanize behind a natural disaster.
They started calling those people refugees from the area. They started calling them refugees, like they were foreigners. Horrifying. I'll never forget it.
Look, I remember when it happened. I was a very, very young man in the military, had just returned from Iraq. And I remember at that time, I had some friends who were from New Orleans, from the 9th Ward, and they had to go on emergency leave literally within hours of us getting off a 20-hour goddamn flight from Iraq back to the U.S.
I was in Brazil, and some of those people like, hey, what's going on in Louisiana? Some people were almost laughing at me for it because they looked at the response. They saw we were fucked up, and they were saying, "This is what you guys are about." Mm-hmm. I was in another country, embarrassed of my own nation, embarrassed by it, embarrassed.
And what these incidents do is really pull the scab off of really the true issues in this country, because again, this country has been very good at masking and putting band-aids over the true issues that people face in this country. And specifically, as we talking about Black people, the true issues that really affect Black people, because the reason you're seeing the numbers that we're seeing as it relates to the coronavirus and Black people is because of a history that has never been reconciled and dealt with. That's a fundamental fact. We know that you have high levels of smog and air pollution in Black neighborhoods because why? Because these are areas that are typically bisected by interstates. Mm-hmm. Heavy traffic flows through these areas. Mm-hmm. So again, what we're seeing here is really that this coronavirus has truly exposed the values of this country, and more importantly, it has really exposed us really how vulnerable not just Black people are, but this country in general is.
Oh, that's a tremendous fact. I was talking to MOT the other day, and he was just driving through the South, and he called me up and he says, Man, look at this up in here. He says, South is finished. And he says, and he wasn't talking about just going through the black South, but the white South, and people just absolutely displaced, torn out. And you have to know, much of white America, especially in the rural areas, are just living just above the poverty line. And said a lot of this stuff is really hitting folks very hard, and it's gutting major areas in in the South, and and then these white folks are catching hell behind this. So we're not the only ones. Just to say, I mean, we are definitely taking some huge hits, but everyone's taking a. This is a giant shit sandwich, and everyone's taking a bite of it.
Yeah. Let me.
Hey, well,
Hey, DE, Raptor, what's going on? Shalom.
DE, what's up, baby?
everybody? How you guys doing?
All right.
What's
all right.
going on,
What
B?
is-
What's up, brother?
Dr. Phoenix, how you doing, bro?
What's going on, man?
One of the things that black people don't really pay attention to is history. And Caucasians don't do the same thing because their government try to assure them that it can't happen to you. See here, it's happened to them, but it can't happen to you. It can only happen to them. We're gonna make sure it can only happen to them. And guess what? The them now is Caucasian. Them folks are beginning to feel it, and they're feeling, and the country is in a position now where they're feeling it worse than we are. We already know what the bottom of the barrel feels like, and when they get the bottom, guess what? You got Caucasians all over the country killing themselves, especially the men. So they're trying very hard to put a face on this thing, but they can't. And Nagon was talking about the man in the White House. His focus is on Wall Street. The rest of the country could fall in the hole for all he cares.
That's exactly right. Right now, and I think it was Dr. Phoenix who said, well, they're going to take a look how many deaths. They're going to be prepared to see how many deaths they're going to have over this, and that's it, man. It's going to be how many deaths are we willing to accept, for to keep the economy going and keep the corporate game, blasted, and that's where we're at, man. This is some real shit. This is something we've seen other pandemics go on, but we haven't seen anything quite like this. And this is a game changer. This is a game changer.
But, they built this country trying to get rid of the king so that everybody who is wealthy can be king. What it was called the proletariat. Well, anyway, that used to have the king and used to have all these. I don't know if you guys know the history of England, but you have like from Bath in the south all the way up to Scotland. You had all these little princedoms that whenever they felt like they overthrow the king. And then King George came along. Well, before him, King George came along, and Queen Elizabeth actually came along and changed all of that. Made the king a strong king, the ruler. And here in America, they try to get rid of the king. But what they did in the president is create a god. And right now, Caucasians look to the president to actually change their lives. They elect the president based on, he said he's going to make them a promise. It's like, God, I make you a promise that I'm going to do this for you. And they elect him based on that. That's how this guy got in the White House. And guess what? He has upended the same people who elected, he upended their lives, and they still believe in it.
All right, let me get to this next article. This is from space.com. What a view. Mercury probe snaps stunning photos of our planet during Earth flyby. A spacecraft bound for Mercury beamed home stunning views of Earth during a crucial flyby conducted early today, April 10th. BB Colombo, a joint mission conducted by the European Space Agency and the Japanese Aerospace Exploration Agency, is headed to our solar system's innermost planet. But to reach that destination, the spacecraft, which launched in October 2018, needs to conduct a complex sequence of 9 different planetary flybys. So this is a shot of it right here. You know, for those of you who think that space is fake. The first of those passes was close to home, as today, BP Colombo came within 7,877 miles of Earth. Fortunately, the spacecraft was well prepared to make the most of the opportunity, since, in addition to its more technical scientific instruments, BP Colombo carries 3 different cameras. Mission personnel are still processing many of the images snapped by the spacecraft, but ESA and JAXA have released both individual images and animated images series are produced as BP Colombo headed toward Earth. That's some really, really, that's really dope. I'm not gonna read any more of this, but basically, it's doing its routine journey before it takes off. So dope stuff. I'm trying to fly through the rest of these articles. Our time is coming limited. All right, next item on the docket is from TechCrunch.com. NASA seeks miniature scientific payload concepts for robotic moon rover scouts. It's an image of the would-be scouts on the moon, these small rovers. NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory is seeking ideas from the public around what kind of scientific equipment they could use to outfit tiny lunar rovers to help with Artemis and other moon missions. The call, issued via crowdsourcing platform HeroX and called Honey, I Shrunk the NASA Payload, in a very contemporary nod to a movie that came out 31 years ago, seeks payloads with maximum dimensions of no more than 4x2 or similar in size to a new bar of soap. Wow. Why the need for instruments so small? NASA wants to be able to perform the kind of science that has in the past required such large vehicles, large orbiters, and large launch vehicles, but with much greater frequency at much lower cost than has been possible before. In order to pave the way for long-term lunar human presence and eventual habitation, NASA says it needs practical and affordable ways to use lunar resources in order to defray the cost of resupply missions. Already an expensive undertaking when just traveling to the International Space Station in Earth's orbit, and astronomically more so when going as far afield as the moon. The goal is for these to be pretty much immediately available for service, with the hope that they can be shipped out to the moon over the course of the next 1 to 4 years. JPL is looking to tap the expertise and experience of the global community to see what's possible with existing materials and technologies. And while this idea challenge is primarily about concept phase designs with $160,000 in prize money payouts available, the longer term goal is to use it as a jumping off point for a pipeline of actual tech that will be incorporated into the future of rovers and sent on lunar missions. Taking part in the challenge is fairly easy, and you actually retain all rights to anything you submit in terms of intellectual property, with the proviso that if you make it to the finals, you have to sign an agreement in which you also grant the US government essentially a perpetual royalty-free license to your creation and whatever they deem appropriate. Sounds like a 360 deal. If you think you've got an idea about how to miniaturize environmental sensors and data gathering equipment for use on what amounts to a space Roomba, There's probably no better opportunity to contribute to NASA's deep space exploration efforts short of landing a JPL gig, which might happen if your idea is good enough. Sounds like a challenge for complex design.
You rang?
Yeah, sounds like a challenge for you.
What's this?
NASA is crowdsourcing its next miniature electric robot for the rover for the moon. So,
Oh, really?
yeah. So, $160,000 in prize money.
You know, this is funny, Mike, because we had an article. You read an article about a couple months ago where they wanted you to produce thing for high density atmospheres. You know, high pressure, high temperature atmospheres, and they didn't mention anything about allowing you to keep the how would you call it, the patents.
Mm-hmm.
And we talked about that. And remember the questions that I was asking me in the go was, hey, would you give somebody $1 trillion thing? And now this article comes up and says, hey, we're gonna allow you to keep it.
Yeah.
So somebody at NASA is listening.
Yeah.
You know, Mike. One of the things that I'm thinking right off the bat is, basically retrofitted RC cars. Using things that are like 10th and 8th scale, maybe 12th. You know,
put a Raspberry Pi on it.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah. You brought me to the challenge, Mike. I accept.
Well, it says it has to be 4 inches by 2 inches.
Yeah.
Holy shit. Okay, so we're talking way smaller.
Yeah, a pocket rocket.
Pocket rocket. Okay.
That fall into the purposes. Yeah, but that's what they're looking for. But people will say, we talking theory over here, but that doesn't sound like too much theory here.
I don't know. They basically just gave us direct fucking dimensions.
Yeah, but we talked about this many times in 2019, 2018. That's 1 in every 3 startups is going to be a space startup going forward past 2020. A lot of opportunities in space exploration. NASA just laid this whole entire thing out right here. There's a high probability, it says right here, short of landing a JPL gig, Jet Propulsion Lab gig, which might happen if your idea is good enough. So if Black people were thinking on this level, Black tech startups and stuff like that.
Dude, we've already seen NASA hand out payload contracts to Blue Origin, SpaceX. I'm trying to think of some of the other firms that launch rockets. They basically given out licenses to companies like Relativity to build 3D printed rockets. Dude, it basically, the space exploration industry is open for business. It's not a privatized governmental wing like it used to be with NASA. Okay, that's not what it is anymore. So, you got to kind of understand how even, this country approaches space exploration now. They opened it up for business. It's just a bunch of companies. It's a bunch of companies that have rockets that they launch in the air. Yeah. It's not like NASA anymore.
Yeah.
But
NASA was always like that, Everything that came out of the space program was given to some.
It was given to them. My aunt used to work for Rockwell International, and my mom used to work for General Dynamics.
Right.
Yep.
They got the patents to all those private, even the beds. The beds that you sleep on today, came from the technology came from the space program. The foam in those beds. So they were given the private industry after the government spent all this money. They give the private industry money to develop it. Those patents were kept, but understanding, we can use this. The government can use this anytime they want to use it for free. And those private companies made money when they got the money from the government. They made money now in civilian atmosphere. You know what I'm saying? They sell it to the public.
Yeah, I was gonna say I mean the life cycle of the technology, it's entities like DARPA that pinpoint technologies that are gonna have the best application for military, right? Take it into the military, it goes there, it goes through its development life cycle until a new technology comes and replaces it. Once it comes out of basically military venue, it then goes into commercial for consumer use.
Mhm.
Case in point, tablets.
Mhm.
Before you saw tablets like in the stores for you to purchase, they were out in the field in theater.
Yeah, let me jump to this next article from the BBC.com. Drones
Can
and
I add something really quick to that, Mike?
yeah, go right ahead, brother. Go right ahead.
Yeah, just something to what Nagone and Dee were saying. One of the most prolific technologies that's used every single day that people don't understand came out of military Department of Defense use is navigation, GPS.
Yep.
GPS was widely used in the military for well over a decade before it became commercialized. Primarily, it started out with some of the luxury car manufacturers like BMW back in the late 90s.
Yep.
And then they brought it to mass market, really sort of mid 2000s. It became more of a mass market thing, and pretty much every vehicle now has some navigation system or some form of GPS in it. So I mean, you've seen this government creating these industries or creating this interest in these technologies, and really the private industry drives the development of it.
Mhm.
But it's the government that spurs the interest in these technologies for really not just really for military applications, but really for security applications.
Yep.
That's where Boston Dynamics, Mike. It's where the companies like them come into play.
Yeah, but if you ask some people in the community, they'll say, "Well, I've always had a TomTom." Probably wishing it was a Leroy or some shit like that. Anyways, let me go to the next article. All right, this one from BBC.com. Drones in Africa, how they could become lifesavers. Let's just keep doing this. She's talking about postpartum hemorrhages, women bleeding after childbirth. I'm always amazed that more attention isn't paid to this. It's the biggest cause of death in childbirth. Tammy's company, LifeBank, delivers life-saving blood to hospitals in her home country of Nigeria and elsewhere on the continent. I didn't know they had running water and electricity and stuff. Usually the blood is transported by roads or boats, but in Ethiopia, some is moved by drone. Mr. Giwa Dubason is visiting Kigali for the first ever African Drone Forum at the Shiny Convention Center, which looks like a giant beehive crossed with a helter-skelter. It glows like a rainbow at night and is the jewel in the crown of the modern Kigali, the fast-changing capital of a country which Rwanda's politicians time and again tell us is open for business. I thought Africa was difficult for doing business according to some
Hey,
people.
Mike, you were just there, weren't you?
Oh, what a coincidence. Technology is front and center of the government's plan to become a higher middle income country by 2050. It's an ambitious goal given over 35% of the population lives in poverty according to government statistics. But it's one which President Paul Kagame is clearly keen to push as he stands in front of the audience and he says the drones will become not just part of Rwandan skies. He wants them manufactured and piloted by Rwandans. I was there. I can tell you firsthand. School children watching hop up and down with excitement, hands to shoot into the air when speakers talk about drone networks. I want to be a drone pilot, one girl who can't be more than 12 announces confidently. This is now one of the coolest jobs in Rwanda. In underdeveloped countries like Rwanda, technology has to be adopted faster, says one college student called Benjamin. His classmate nods. She's studying engineering too. People don't know about drones, but the young girl can tell the older generation, he adds. Rwanda, the country of 1,000 hills and slow, tediously winding roads, was the first in the world to embrace a commercial delivery service by drone when Silicon Valley firm Zipline began flying blood in 2016. It received a huge amount of global publicity and has delivered tens of thousands of units of blood. But Zipline is an exception. Its flights are classified as government flights, meaning it has high-level exemptions when it comes to air traffic management. It's the thorny issue of regulation and management of lower airspace, which all agree is key to the establishment of sustainable long-term drone delivery networks. Timmy explains how her drivers have to learn the location of 400 hospitals by heart, as the maps aren't accurate enough in frantically urbanizing city like Lagos, which is also clogged by traffic. Drones for her are just a way to get what's needed to patients faster. But in Nigeria, they are not used for drops. The regulation isn't there yet, she says. But she and most people here believe that this will change in that African skies, which are less congested than many parts of the world, will lead the way. But can it happen as quickly as many seem impatient to see, and should it? Freddie Mbuya, who owns the Tanzanian technology firm Huru Labs, is a self-confessed naysayer. I don't think that delivery drones in Africa will be realistic in any meaningful way for the next decade. There's humanitarian need, but no market opportunity. It exists now because of donor money and sponsorship. For him and his company, drones are mapping and land surveying for clients such as miners are the most compelling use case. The World Bank's Edward Anderson, not to be confused with the other guy who has focused on drones in the region, argues that they should be regarded as useful, not just for medical deliveries. Rwanda is one of the most densely populated rural parts of the world. In the long run, we're looking at drones providing economic opportunity in agriculture for small-scale manufacturers and to deliver time-sensitive goods such as cash and documents. A 90-kilometer drive from Kigali, taking over 4.5 stomach-churning hours, we arrive at the temporary drone port in a stunning spot by a bay of Lake Kivu, close to the border with the Democratic Republic of Congo. Rwanda's rural areas are densely populated, but road infrastructure is inadequate. Most people walk miles up steep high-sided hills, and the main road of Kigali has a constant stream of foot traffic. The lake is quiet and still. A local fisherman tells us that's because of strict restrictions due to the neighboring country's ongoing Ebola outbreak. The Army says no. He says bluntly when we ask why there are so few boats, which would be a lot faster than roads to transport goods. We covered this article. We covered an article before that talked about that lake actually has gas sitting beneath it.
Oh, really? Natural gas?
Yes, big energy source. So you're going to see an explosion as Rwanda becomes a energy independent supplier of gas throughout the region.
Have they claimed jurisdiction over that gas deposit?
Yeah, it's already being tested now. It's in the testing phase.
Okay.
Next year. This is the Lake Kivu Challenge, the competition portion of the drone forum, and teams from around the world, mainly from Europe, are competing for contracts with the Rwandan government. In a shed next to the hut where the little drones sit ready for their turn, we see mock-ups of blood transfusion bags and medical samples. These will be picked up by the drones, dropped at a nearby island, then collected again within a certain time limit. Anyways, I'm not going to read too much of that. But
we've covered this as a topic extensively.
Yeah, but you have people that will tell you this isn't happening. I don't know what you're talking about.
No, that picture that you showed with the drone in the sky, that was theoretical right there.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
The conference that you were at, you know, the drone conference that was in the same convention center,
Mhm.
that didn't really happen, Mike. That was your imagination.
That was theoretical, and I'm also
Yeah.
thinking, isn't this kind of sub-Saharan Africa where people walking around with bare feet and they don't have running water and they're shithole countries and they're only reading at a 3% reading rate?
Right. But we're talking about drone delivery, right? We're talking about something where, let's think about this for a second, because the article says, okay, bad road infrastructure, lots of hills and roads that aren't really developed, and, you know, to go like 90 kilometers, 4 hours, 4 hours. Okay. Send a drone up because the skies are not cluttered. Makes sense.
Send a drone up, but that's theoretical, right?
Well, drones are actually real. I've had a couple I've toyed around with. So
Yeah.
I don't know. They were very real when I got them.
Oh, so it wasn't theoretical. Okay, that's all I want to know.
No, I actually bought them. And my daughter was even playing with them. She
I got a
remembers them.
drone. I got a drone.
Oh, Dr. Phoenix has a theoretical drone too.
I got a drone.
Yeah,
I got one as a
I
Christmas
bought a
gift
drone
a few years ago. So
Yeah, for
Now
those-
that's a theoretical convention center right there.
yeah, this is a picture of the convention center I was at during the after party of the Drone Expo. Okay.
you know, I do want to say something because they start off talking
Hey,
about
Mike, blow
maternal
that up a
fetal
little
health.
bit. Sorry. I'm sorry, Dr. Phoenix. I'm sorry.
No,
Mike,
no,
just
go
blow it
ahead,
up.
go ahead.
Go good. No. Well, Mike, just expand that picture a little bit. That's all. I'm sorry.
It's already expanded out.
Yeah, this is lovely. You know, I do want to say something because I remember Mike contacting me back in December, and we did like over a 4-hour hangout about maternal fetal health,
Mhm.
where myself, Dark Side 90 joined. I even think Super Triz and even Ajiza joined. And I want to say spent more than 4 hours going through Black women and maternal fetal health and infant mortality rates.
Yep, I remember that one.
So you know, for the life of me, I cannot understand why are there these arguments about what you're talking about, and this is not a real possibility. And even more importantly, speaking about drones, I don't know if people know, and I know folks that in Atlanta, they know this. They're using drones right now in Atlanta to tell you to keep your asses in the house.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
They have drones
With
outfitted
drones with a speaker.
Yeah.
Yes,
There's a
they have
beautiful-
drones outfitted with speakers, and they're literally
Amazing.
having the police and have the drones flying around in parks and public spaces in Atlanta right now, telling people get out the parks, get out these public spaces, keep your distance, keep your 6 feet of distance, or keep your butt at home.
Yeah.
So this is happening right now. This is not theory. This is not a Gene Roddenberry book. You know, this is real life.
Yeah, absolutely.
But if your car has a computer on it, especially the OnStar system,
Mm-hmm.
even at night, the police can follow you wherever you go with a drone.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty much. Pretty much. But this is a picture of what the convention center looks like in Rwanda, you know.
That's
For all
pretty
the,
lovely.
yeah, it's a beautiful sight walking through there at night to see it from a far distance and even come up.
Yep.
It's a beautiful sight.
Looks gorgeous.
And when you have something like that in your country,
Mhm.
it's literally an inspiration to the population, the general population. I'm not talking about the wealthy that travel.
Yeah.
I'm talking about the people who live in the country, who maybe travel to the other countries surrounding the country. They travel to Kenya or Tanzania, but never travel to Europe or Saudi Arabia or Qatar or, Paris.
Mhm.
When they see something like this built in their country, it's like
Well,
a sense
because
of pride.
it was built by your hands and the hands of
Exactly. Your own people, your finance build that.
It's an amazing place to be at. Every person I spoke to has this picture on their phone for whatever reason. They have this picture on their phone.
See, that's the pride in it, man. That's the pride in their country.
That shit's beautiful, man. That's a beautiful sight, man. That's just beautiful.
And it was shot with a Rwandan Mara phone.
Oh, now Rwanda my phone.
Wait, the same
Uh-oh.
one that I'm actually talking to you guys on right now?
Hold on a second.
That
But,
phone?
Uh-oh.
but that's not a Rwandan phone. Isn't that a Chinese phone?
No.
No.
Isn't that a Middle Isn't that a Middle Eastern phone?
It's
How do you-
manufactured in the same theoretical place that you see that theoretical convention center there.
How do you
It-
that convention center? How do you think it
It
compares?
is not an Arabic phone. It's not an Arabic phone.
It's not Vodafone.
How do you think that convention center compares to that the statue they have in Dakar, Senegal, with the guy and the woman and the child pointing forward, but there's trash everywhere.
I haven't been over there yet, so I can't really compare that. But this is, this is their, I don't want to say a Statue of Liberty, but it's like their version of Capitol Hill. Like if it had gold around it, it'd be even more impressive. But from a distance, anywhere you stand on a mountaintop or something like that, and you see, I think from a distance, it's just a beautiful sight. Whoever came up with it, man, were geniuses.
I told you,
it
man, I
reminds
see
me of
those
something-
palm trees there, man. It makes me feel like home already.
It reminded me of something years ago when I went to Morocco, and the first time I ever saw Morocco at night, just this lovely place, lovely skyline, and it truly did look like something out of a 1001 Arabian Nights. And and you see something like, you see a photo like that, I mean, you can't help, if you're the people there, to not have pride in something like that, because it looks so lovely. But more importantly, it was built by your people, by the hands of your people. So I mean, again, I think part of what happens here, and in many of these discussions, is that there's really not a focus on. I don't think there's a whole lot of things that at least tangibly Black folks can point to that say this is a living monument of what we've been able to do. I mean, we can point to all these individual successes and things that individually many Black folks have done throughout history, but there's something that's standing right now that you can tangibly point to that says that this is us.
And it's new, man. So it's like a symbol. When you look at what happened with Rwanda just some years ago, right? This is a symbol. This is the reason why, like, structures, especially in places, of high prominence, they become tourist attractions and stuff, right? Because they've stood the test of time. They serve as markation points in the history of a country.
Very, very, very good point, because that country went through some real horrific changes, and look what's come out of it. So that should also tell you, how people can put their heads together, turn things around.
Maybe that's a kind of a metaphor for the entire diaspora, that things until things get so bad, like literally where people are like wiped to zero, and then you start afresh. I don't know, because you think about it. I mean, I remember being a kid watching Nightline, Ted Koppel, and talking about what's going on over there, and it was just the atrocities.
Yeah.
They had to get to that point in order to get to where they are now, and the upside is just infinite for them. I mean,
Well, that's
they're moving us.
the whole thing. They never had to go there. They were pushed there by rather nefarious forces. They never had to go there, but they went there.
Yeah,
And
they
it
went there.
Showed you just how crazy that was, and look what's come out of it.
Yeah, but look at just everybody in the diaspora, even over here. You talk, you tell people what they need to do, what's gonna happen, and no one really like takes heed. You have nothing, and you literally have to build from scratch. And I'm not saying I hope it doesn't get to that point. I hope it never does. But it's just amazing what they've done.
Just know that there's a reason why that every time you talk about the social hierarchy of the human species, right, you have to contextualize it in the shape and form of a pyramid, right? So that would even mean that even amongst our small populace here in this country, there's only going to be yet but a smaller population of people who are going to one, see the vision, and then two, actually make a move at it. right? So I'm at a stage in my life where I think I've learned a thing or two about this, and I don't have the expectation. What I do is I wait for brothers to say, "Hey, look, I see what you're doing, man. Here's what I want to bring to that." Right. And then that lets me know that I'm of like mind and like kind in terms of what it is that I'm trying to do. And that's really how you have to vet this and look at this going forward. This notion that there will be this singular agenda, utter nonsense. Like you look, you could see it just in a social space on YouTube. The volatility of the type of division that clashing ideals can cause, right? So if you are in alignment with those who have the same type of industrial objectives, then I think you've got a team. But if you are talking about a collective agenda, I think you got a clusterfuck.
Who's that brother who was just saying that he hope it don't get to that point? What's your name, bro?
Jesus.
Well, look, bro, let me tell you something. I don't know if you know a lot about history. If you go back to Europe, if you look at Europe and America, when Europe was falling apart, I mean, they were literally starving.
Yes.
They were picking up people off the streets of London and Manchester and Liverpool and Bath and everywhere in England and some parts of Europe too, putting them on a boat and say bring them to court and say either you go to America or you go into jail. And we are getting to that point. Every technology, every time you see a change in the world like this, the country who is on top go through the same changes as you read about Europe going through, that forced them to pick up half their population and ship them to Australia, America, the Caribbean, Africa, South Africa. That's what you're going to see in America. And if the black people here don't get their behinds up and move before it comes to a point,
they're not.
Either they're going to die in this thing like the corona, or some other form. History says it.
Yeah, DE is bringing up a very good point, and we talked about this many times in the past. But you even see it right, like somebody else was saying earlier. You see it right happening right now. I think Complex was talking about. You see it happening right now on YouTube, where people are talking about these versions of a social space, and it's like, well, wait a second here. I think you might have this a bit misunderstood and misguided, and I don't think they're talking for bloodshed. That what they're going to do to people on this side of the space is like, what do you?
Not even, but I was like I said, I like to listen to different different interviews or videos of YouTube, and something came up on my feed, and it was I think it was a Breakfast Club, and everybody's like interviewing from their house and stuff like that. But this is something that has money invested in it. They have people, and if you see the lowbrow conversation that they're having, even in this time, they're asking some rapper about a threesome, and I'm just like, I couldn't, I just, and I'm like, man, am I a prude now? Like, I don't even want to hear this shit. Like, this is what we're talking about?
Default conversation in Black society.
Jesus Christ. I'm like,
well,
are you serious?
I mean, so there is only a pandemic going on,
This is a default conversation, brother.
It's disgusting, man. But dude, it's not like I'm an old man. I'm an old holy Bible thumping dude. No, I'm just like, I like.
No, dude, there's a fucking pandemic going on.
Exactly, there's a pandemic going on, and you're asking some dude how his threesome was. Some rapper, and
you're a healthcare professional. You work in an area where you're seeing some of the hardest hit group of people. Okay.
Just wiping them out.
And you're seeing how a pandemic, how one virus that everyone knows is not as quite as lethal, but however, it's far more infectious than the flu, for example, and how it can just bring an entire country to its knees.
Yeah, whole world, bro.
You can put the entire world at risk, and how this one virus is going to change the very way we interface with each other going forward. Because I, you know, even if they reopen everything, it's not about to be what it was when this year started.
No. There's no question about it. And I'm actually thinking when I'm looking at it, because I've looked at this manosphere, and I've looked at just like Jisoo was talking about you know, the Breakfast Club and all this. I just look at all this stuff together, and I actually think I'm looking at a level of what I would call COVID psychosis. I think, and I'm not joking. I think I am not joking. I actually think some people have fucking bugged out, and I think there's bugging. I think there's some general bugging out going on, and I think we're going to need out of this not only physical health, but I think the mental health game is going to have to be put on fleek a little bit here to deal with some of the aftermath and some of the PTSD and some of the psychosis and some of the other things.
No, it's not PTSD. You know, you talking, and not to interrupt you, you're saying as if these people, if these things happen to them as if they're victims. No, these people want to, they gravitate. Look, man, it's a race to the bottom.
Hold on.
I gotta move on to the next article, brother. I gotta move on to the next article.
I'm just saying, I just think there's a psychosis going on. I do think so. I'm sorry, Mike. Go ahead, man. Go ahead.
Yeah, my bad.
Yeah. All right. Next item on the docket is from TechCrunch.com. Virgin's Vox Space snags $35 million Space Force launch contract and prepares for final test flights. Who knew that you could use a Boeing 777 to launch a satellite to space?
I mean, it makes sense.
Yeah. Vox Space, this Virgin Space subsidiary dedicated to government launches, has scored a valuable new contract with the U.S. Space Force and is about to move from testing to full operations, the company announced today. The Space Force contract is for 3 launches and is valued at $35 million. 3 launches. The company will be launching payloads for the Defense Department's Space Test Program S-28, a set of technology demonstrations in low Earth orbit. More than 36 satellites will be launched, enabling advancements in space domain awareness and communications and informing future developments of the USSF space architecture. Those launches, like others planned for the UK and Israeli governments, aren't exactly imminent. Vox is still in the testing phase, but expects to put payloads into orbit come 2021, next year. Vox and Virgin Orbit differ from most other launch providers in that their launch vehicles consist of a rocket strapped to the belly of a 747. This promising but unproven technique could enable a highly mobile and responsive launch infrastructure taken off from pretty much anywhere with a runway. After years of engineering and tests, Cosmic Girl, that's the plane, and Launcher One, the rocket stage, will take the payload to orbit, are almost ready for their debut. The company is planning one last rehearsal in the form of a cryogenic captive carry flight, in which everything is almost exactly as it would be during a real launch, including a super cooled liquid in the rocket's fuel tanks, but they stopped short of detaching and firing the rocket's engines. The full burn and first orbital payload will be saved for the launch demo, which is planned for later next year. Of course, the global pandemic hasn't made things easy on the company. In a blog post signaling readiness for the next test, the company explained, as the pandemic reached our home in California, we sent all of our staff home with full pay, giving them a week to prepare for the many changes that were to come for them and their families, and giving ourselves all the time we needed to design an entirely new way of working. We reconfigured our mission control. We rewrote the procedures for our technicians on the shop floor and at the test site in order to meet social distancing requirements. We were already accustomed to using personal protective equipment during many of our operations, but now we are ramping up our standards to match the latest guidelines from the CDC and other leading medical experts. And of course, we are spending extra time regularly sterilizing every square inch of our manufacturing facility, constantly educating our staff and much more. So who knew that you can use a Boeing jet to send up a rocket?
Why not?
Yeah, but they've been doing that with, I mean, the 47, even the B1, B2. They've been launching what's called from on the wing or inside for how long now? 20 years. You know what I'm saying? This rocket is much bigger than a missile, but you know, you got the aircraft, you got the lift capacity. It can be done.
I don't see it any different than when, you know, say like, for example, when what do they call that, DE, when like say like a sub launches a missile, right? And it's using like what, like pneumatic pressure,
Yeah,
right? So what you're doing is you're basically throwing it into the air, and then you know, then it fires off, right? This is kind of the same
yeah,
thing. You're just using a plane to take it up, and you're gonna drop it, and it's gonna fire off, and then go where it needs to go.
Well, the plane is moving at 500 miles an hour. Keep that in mind.
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
But what you have is the weight. The
Yeah.
weight of that rocket. Once it comes off the airplane, it's not going to tilt up. Just the weight's going to, because the aerodynamics of the airplane and the rocket, you can slow the airplane down or you can speed up the airplane.
Yep.
And if you slow the airplane down, then when you drop that payload, the payload too is going to fall. It's not like it's going to fire. It's not like a missile that is going to ignite immediately. The payload is going to fall because the aircraft is not moving fast enough for the payload to act like it's
It's below Mach 1.
Right.
Yeah, it's below Mach 1. We have, or at least we had Black Torch on the panel.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know why they use it. Well, 47 is probably the biggest airplane they had access to, but
Yeah.
a 777 actually would, in my opinion, would do a better job of doing this.
Well, I think it had largely to do with probably getting access to these planes at a very affordable price, right?
Yeah,
So
right.
It
That's
do it,
true.
it can do it because really the whole idea is for it to do simply this and this alone.
Right.
So if you can get a plane at an affordable price to do this, and these are like commercial airliners, which I guess in the airline industry could be had, you know, if you're in that industry, yeah, you can have them dime a dozen. Then
The
yeah, it makes sense.
747 has been retired from a lot of markets, so there's a lot of them in Arizona. You can
Yeah,
pick up
and then
for
out in the
song.
fields, out there.
Yeah. Because I mean, we talked about this before. We you know, there's been many launches of you know, these balloon satellites, right? These sort of big, you know, these big balloons that carry the payload up to a certain distance and then it takes off into space. They've done that in Africa a couple of times the last 10 years or so. These are kids doing this, or at least students for that matter, and they've been very successful at doing it. But I'm surprised that no one else, no other government agency, you know, from abroad has thought of a cheap launch vehicle like this.
Well, the cheapest launch vehicle they proposing is the space ladder. But to build that, you know, we have the technology, but doing it, nobody's ever tried.
With that sort of lattice structure.
Yeah,
I don't know.
because you can build it, and it's theoretical, it can work, but nobody's ever tried it.
A real if I say a real, you understand what I'm talking about? A real can probably do almost the same thing that a space ladder does.
Well, the reason why a space ladder is it's because it's the amount of energy it takes to deliver payload up and down. It would be much cheaper with a ladder.
We're using a structure to climb it versus propellants, right?
Exactly. So you don't have to carry all that oxygen and fuel and all that.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. Next item on the docket from VentureBeat.com: the fourth industrial revolution is key to getting the global economy and our lives back on track.
You know what? Go ahead, Mike. I'm gonna let you read it, dude. Go
Mike.
ahead.
Preventative measures implemented by countries worldwide to halt the coronavirus COVID-19 outbreak are forcing us to make fundamental changes to how we live, from work to play, business education, policy making to legislation. How long these measures will remain in place is hard to say, but it is widely feared that they could be here for quite some time and will likely have a permanent impact on our lives. While we must take every sensible precaution, we cannot indefinitely pause all economic and social activities. One way or another, life must go on, which is why it is now critical to find innovative ways to circumvent this pandemic or any other potential disruption. We often hear that the fourth industrial revolution is a force for disruption, posing a threat to the livelihood of people and the economic prosperity of society. However, current circumstances are portraying a very different picture, where fourth industrial revolution technologies are presenting solutions to restore many parts of our daily lives, helping us overcome unprecedented challenges. For example, technology and digital connectivity are allowing many people to work remotely and meet virtually, while education systems are offering children distance learning from the safety of their homes through webinars. Moreover, while we have been buying products on e-commerce platforms for many years now, this trend has recently been overtaken by online shopping for household essentials, which may very well become the norm in our pandemic world. Not only does the fourth industrial revolution allow us to get on with our lives, but also big data is also enabling us to triangulate the spread of the coronavirus, providing vital information that helps governments and healthcare systems react effectively and rapidly to contain the outbreak. Furthermore, 3D systems is also being used to ramp up production of essential medical supplies at short notice, and that might be difficult to source through traditional supply chains such as surgical masks, ventilator components, and diagnostic kits. There is no doubt fourth industrial revolution technologies enable business activity to continue while maintaining the discipline of social distancing. For example, blockchain technology enables us to secretly sign contracts without the need of being physically present.
Holy shit! I think we talk about blockchain an awful lot around here.
Sounds like theory.
Sorry.
Artificial intelligence
I'm sorry. Go ahead, dude.
Power the factory floor and allow remote decision making, while robots can ensure production remains ongoing without exposing the workforce to any risk of infection. By combining the industrial Internet of Things, IIoT, with cloud computing, global manufacturers could also remotely access a virtual command and control center to monitor and operate multiple facilities from anywhere in the world. At the current pace of adoption of these transformative technologies, we may very well end up ride hailing an autonomous vehicle in the very near future, and thereby avoiding being within close proximity of others who are contagious. Therefore, we must embrace a new digital DNA for our society that will probably need to be fueled perpetually with creativity and innovation. After all, innovation has proven to be an effective tool that can solve pressing challenges, and it remains to be the driving force behind the advancement of humanity and the acceleration of global good. The Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations call, amongst 16 other objectives, for good health and well-being of all. The current global health crisis has lent further urgency to actions that require us to be united and resilient. The pandemic will undoubtedly shock the manufacturing sector in the near term, and even force the temporary or permanent closure of many factories. At some point, though, the global health crisis will come to a formidable end. The disruption to supply chains will shift countries towards more domestic production and capacity building programs for their local workforce. In the longer term, the crisis will spur more innovation to advance digital technology, leaving a legacy of fundamental change to the way many things are made, used, or disposed of. This is a new era of digital restoration, one that will not only restore our social and economic networks, but will also pivot us towards a digital world that is empowered enabled and expedited by fourth industrial revolution technologies to restore global prosperity. I'll just get a job at Walmart moving boxes and stuff like that. Know what I mean? Okay.
Then I'll move up to manager. You know what I'm saying?
It's funny.
The only thing this article didn't say that it say, for instance, you are from the Congo. Everything that you build a factory, and you can build one factory. You can build this factory, say like a Ford Motor plant,
Mhm.
and inside that plant has 3D computers that's going to print out everything that you need. They have everything that they need to build this thing is in the Congo itself.
Mhm.
Congo doesn't need another country. And you see where Europe is going because they don't have the raw materials. You see where China is going because they don't have the raw materials. You see where America is going because it don't have the raw materials. Now you got two places where you can find most of the raw materials on Earth: Africa and Asia. When I say Asia, I don't mean the part that they call Europe. I mean the part that they call Russia.
No, you're talking about like the stand countries.
Well,
you got
there's
essentially
three places actually. There's the oceans, the bottom of the oceans have it, but we can't get to a lot of that.
Well, hello. So
Hello?
somebody's going to sink and somebody's going to swim, and that's
Well,
why.
they found all those minerals off the coast of Hawaii. There's a whole field of them.
Yeah,
Those
because of volcano. Because
yeah, those
volcano
rare
action is going to throw that in the ocean.
yeah, those rare earth minerals.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
but if we saw the Kilauea eruptions that were going on last year,
mhm.
okay, there was a nuclear site that basically ended up getting destroyed. So I don't know if I mean, people really hadn't been really following that. It was a thing with us because we're basically off the coast, right? So when the Fukushima thing happened with Japan,
Mhm.
guess where they were projecting all that water and radiation and shit coming to, right? And now the shit with Hawaii, kind of the same thing. It got contained a little bit different, but what it showed was that because of the volatile nature of the living environment there with like volcanoes and shit, right? Like it's going to be very difficult to try to rely on something like a nuclear facility or something like that when the living environment is very volatile right underneath the ground.
Well, it's the whole ring of fire. It's just, well,
Yeah,
it's
it was
but
they
it's
call it the Pacific Ring.
yeah, the ring of
Yeah,
fire. That's where
right.
it goes all the way from Japan all the way down to Chile, all the
And
way
then
up.
circles around. It comes up California and then up
Mm,
to
Yep, it goes all the way to
yeah,
Alaska,
Alaska.
Japan,
Yep.
all that.
Yeah,
But
there's
that
very heavy tectonic activity in that area as well. So
Right. Well,
see,
people don't understand. People don't understand that the majority of the United States actually sits on the North American plate, right?
yep,
And it's a certain part of the Western states that actually sits on the Pacific plate. So,
yep.
like out here in California, we actually sit on a different tectonic plate.
yeah, you
So
guys got that San Andreas fault line, and then you
right.
got the other major fault line that runs in the Midwest through pretty much through
Dude,
St. Louis to
through.
Missouri.
Yeah, I was gonna say it runs through New
Uh,
Madrid
it runs through
in
that park.
Missouri and New Madrid.
No,
Yes.
that park, the Yellowstone.
Yeah, yes, Yellowstone's a
Yellowstone.
super volcano. So.
Yeah,
That's
but
a super
that's
volcano,
the
but no,
one.
no,
That's
you
the
got to look
one.
at. There's actually two. You got to look at the New Madrid fault line. Like, look
Well,
that one up. That's the one that runs through the middle of the country.
oh, okay,
But
I didn't know about that one. I know
Yeah.
about the super volcano because when that blows, they said Nebraska will be a shipping port now.
but there's one that runs all the way up to the Mississippi Valley,
Yeah,
That's the New Madrid. That's the New Madrid fault
and
line.
one that runs up the east coast of the U.S.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know about that one.
Yeah.
no, the one it's not really the east coast of it because it's like half the east coast. It's in the middle of that plate, so it's kind of strange the way it is.
Yeah,
Eh,
there's a canyon that begins all the way down
You're talking about the trench, the Atlantic Trench.
Down from Venezuela all the way up.
Yeah, that's the Atlantic Trench. That's the yeah. But what I was saying about Africa, Africa is most of it lives on one plate. It's only the part that's going towards the Saudis and that part is on a different plate.
Yeah, there's one that runs up from Zimbabwe all the way up to Yemen, I think.
Yep, and that's
it's
the one
already
that's
started to move.
Yeah, there's pictures of it. When I go to Africa next time, I'll make sure to take a picture of it.
Just last year in Tanzania, about 100 yards of land just moved.
Yep.
And a big deep hole disappeared.
Yeah, let me get to this article real quick. This is from MSN.com. Artificial intelligence may be pandemic lifesaver one day. On December 30th, researchers using artificial intelligence systems to comb through media and social platforms detected the spread of the unusual flu-like illness in Wuhan, China. It would be days before the World Health Organization released a risk assessment and a full month before an UNHCR declared a global public health emergency for the novel coronavirus. Could the AI systems have accelerated the process and limited or even arrested the extent of the COVID-19 pandemic? Clark Freefield, a Northeastern University computer scientist working with a global disease surveillance platform, HealthMap, one of the systems detecting the outbreak, said it remains an open question. We identified the early signals, but the reality is it's hard to tell when you have an unidentified respiratory illness if it's a really serious situation, said Freefeld. Dataminer, a real-time risk detection technology firm, said it delivered the earliest warning about COVID-19 on December 30th based on eyewitness accounts from inside Wuhan hospitals. Pictures of the disinfection of the Wuhan seafood market where the virus originated, in a warning by a Chinese doctor who later died from the virus himself. One of our biggest challenges is we tend to be reactive in these situations. It's human nature, said Carmen Khan, founder and chief executive of the Toronto-based disease tracking firm Blue Dot, one of the early systems that flashed warning flags in December over the epidemic. Whenever you're dealing with a new emerging disease, you don't have all the answers. Time is your most valuable resource. You cannot get it back. Khan, who is also a professor of medicine and public health at the University of Toronto, told AFP by telephone the data showed echoes of the SARS outbreak 17 years earlier, but we didn't know was how contagious this was. Nevertheless, AI systems have proven to be valuable in tracking epidemics by scouring a diverse array of sources ranging from airline bookings, Twitter, and Weibo messages to news reports and sensors on connected devices. Still, Fairfield said AI systems have limits, and the biggest decisions must still be made by humans. We use the AI system as a force multiplier, but we are committed to the concept of having humans in the loop, he said. AI and machine learning systems are likely to help the battle in several ways, from tracking the outbreak itself to speeding up drug testing. We can run simulations unlike we've ever done before. We understand biological pathways unlike we've understood before, and that's all because of the power of AI, said Michael Greeley of the equity firm Flair Capital Partners, which has invested in several AI medical startups. But Greeley said it remains challenging to apply these technologies to sectors like drug delivery, where the normal testing time can be years. There is extraordinary pressure on the industry to start using these tools, even though they may not be ready for prime time, he said. According to Khan, AI is helping the containment phase with systems that use anonymized smartphone location data to track the progression of the disease and find hotspots, and to determine if people are following social distancing guidelines. Andrew Kress, CEO of the health technology firm Health Verity said it remains challenging to collect medical data for disease outbreaks while complying with patient privacy. It's possible to detect trends with signals such as pharmacy visits and sales of certain medications or even online searches, Chris said. But aggregating that that has privacy implications. We need to have real discussions about balance and utility around specific use cases and potentially the right kind of search to continue to figure out new ways to leverage some of the non-traditional data sources. AI systems are also being put to work to scour the thousands of research studies for clues on what treatments might be effective. Last week, researchers joined the White House in an effort to make available some 29,000 coronavirus research articles that can be scanned for data mining. The effort brought together the Allen Institute for AI, Chan Zuckerberg Initiative, Microsoft, Georgetown University, and others. Never heard of this person before, Chan Zuckerberg. Who is this person?
That's his wife.
I thought you still use her own last name.
No, she.
No,
That's
they're
her. That's
married.
his wife.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're married.
Okay. Yeah.
Vocagal, a machine learning and data science community owned by Google, these tools will be openly available for researchers around the world. It's difficult for people to manually go through more than 20,000 articles and synthesize their findings, said Kaggle CEO and co-founder Anthony Goldblum.
Wait, what did he just say?
He says it's difficult to go through 20,000 articles and synthesize their findings.
I don't know. I mean, I think we've gotten close to that.
Recent advances in technology can be helpful here. We're putting machine readable versions of these articles in front of our computer of more than 4 million data scientists. Our hope is that AI can be used to help find answers to a set of questions about COVID-19. Engineering cannabis is in the chat going ham.
This article was put up to convince congressmen that they should change the law.
Yeah.
That's basically what I'm looking at.
Mm-hmm.
It's I don't know who wrote it, but its facts are not correct. First of all, the first outbreak that we know of, with the report was written in November. So I don't know where they keep with this December time frame. And then the thing that they reported to the WHO was in January 11th. So, I don't know where these guys are getting these facts from, but they're not correct at all.
But it's not about the facts of the matter. It's when I'm reading the article, is almost every sentence contains something to do with privacy.
Oh, well, your privacy's out the window when it comes to a pandemic.
So-
You know that.
So they're trying to convince congressmen and say, you know what, we need you to allow us to do this. And
Didn't you hear the key line? To make sure that you're doing social distancing. That was the key line. They want to anonymize her. Who's gonna really? They're gonna try to anonymize all the cell phone data.
Well, they said they were looking at WeChat messages.
The
So guess
WeChat
what?
that's filtered that they can read. The only one who has the capability to do this, and we know, is the NSA, which is picking up all these cell phones calls anyway out of New Zealand. Everybody knows that they're doing that. So
Yeah, they got a vacuum there.
yeah.
Not only New Zealand.
No, but they're doing it for the world. But you know what I mean. I can't. We're trying not to get in trouble on this thing.
Yeah.
Right.
Not only in New Zealand, they have a vacuum. They have a vacuum truck in other places too.
Yeah, but
Let me
let's change the subject on that one.
let me get to this next article from technologyreview.com. Reinforcement learning AI are vulnerable to a new kind of attack. Adversarial attacks against the technique that powers game playing AIs and could control self-driving cars shows it may be less robust than we thought. I don't want to read this article right now because I think I'm going to try to stick with the point of
Well, that's what I remember that article, Mike, that the guy was saying that the security was not going to be involved and AI was going to take over. This is what I was trying to tell you, that AI is vulnerable to security. I mean, if I,
that's
you know,
reinforcement learning though. That's reinforcement learning, not the AI itself.
oh, okay.
Yeah, that's reinforcement learning. This is from Forbes.com. AI projects, where to start? Let me just go through this real quick. Artificial intelligence is clearly a must-have when it comes to being competitive in today's markets, but implementing this technology has been challenging even for some of the world's top companies. There are issues with data, finding the right talent, and creating models that generate sufficient return on investment. As a result, many AI projects fail. According to the IDC, about 35% of organizations succeeded in getting models into production successfully. While we see AI technology performing a swath of incredible feats such as Google Translate, AlphaGo, and solving Rubik's Cube, it can be hard to tell which business problems AI is apt to solve. And Ankur Goel, who is the CEO of Impera, this has led to a lot of confusion in a vendor community that has taken advantage of it by labeling things as AI when they aren't. It's very reminiscent of early last decade when cloud technologies took off and we had a lot of cloud washing going on. We had vendors marketing themselves as cloud players when their offerings were vaporware. Similarly, we are going through a period of AI washing now. So then if your company is thinking of implementing AI, that is the best way to, what is the best way to start? How can you help boost the odds of success and avoid pitfalls? Here's a look at some strategies. AI is not magic. It will not solve all your company's problems. Rather, you need to take a realistic approach to the technology. Unlike traditional data analytics, machine learning models that power AI are not always going to offer clear-cut answers, said Santiago Giraldo, who is the senior product marketing manager of data engineering at Cloudera. Implementing AI into the business requires an experimentation and understanding that not every experiment is going to drive ROI. When an AI project is successful, it is often built on top of many failed data science experiments. Taking a portfolio approach to ML and AI enables greater longevity in projects and the ability to build on the successes of more effectively in the future. Interestingly enough, there are often situations when the technology is really just overkill. Oftentimes, businesses take on AI projects not realizing that it might have been cheaper to continue a process manually instead of investing large amounts of time and money into building a system that doesn't save the company time or money, said Gus Walker, who is the Senior Director of Product Management at Veritone. Yeah, this is very true. An AI engineer or architect or developer is going to cost you about $125K minimum, okay? And then you have to factor in these other personnel that's going to be involved in the team, like DevOps and people who are involved in the DevOps methodology, and sysadmins or SREs for that matter. So you're talking about spending $500,000 to develop a project that may have saved you less than 100,000 going in. So you have to ask yourself, is it worth it going into AI? Where is it going to really benefit you? For a lot of organizations, some CTOs and some CIOs see all of these buzzwords: AI, cloud, ML, machine learning, cybersecurity, all these buzzwords. And what they want to do is they want to be on the forefront of LinkedIn to say, I help my company save, 19%, 21% year over year by implementing AI. But they didn't tell you what the upfront cost was. And
they didn't tell you that it was a goddamn chat bot.
Or not even a chat bot, just the business process itself. The business process is really what's key for AI, right? Taking away that human element is really the whole goal of it, or to enable. It's supposed to be a business enabler, not so much as to, fire one person who's making like 35 grand a year. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to spend
Right.
$500,000 to fire a person who makes 35 grand a year.
And that's well, Mike, and I think that's where conceptually people get it twisted, right? It's not to, like, dude, that was a perfect point. It's not to replace like a person who's getting paid 40 grand a year. It's actually to improve the entire company process as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the company process or because maybe I'm in a different, I look at it differently, but AI, as far as you do in like IT and biotech is the way you're gonna go, because we go through a lot of rapid experiments, and those experiments you could actually have the AI actually do the experiments, because they're basically, you're performing thousands and hundreds of thousands of these experiments on different compounds. So if you could cut that down dramatically by instead of having a machine do it, it's a lifesaver. Saves a lot of lives and a lot of time.
To add to what Torch was just saying, he's absolutely correct. And there's a podcast I think everyone on the panel in the chat should check out. It's called Moneyball Medicine, and it's based on a book that was written by, I think the gentleman's a physician. He wrote this book a few years ago, but he has some very good interviews with folks who are in the pharmaceutical industry, physicians, number of different kinds of scientists. And a lot of the stuff he talks about is the application of AI and machine learning within that space. And certainly, especially in areas right now, given what's going on, clinical trials. Because one of the hardest things about clinical trials, for example, is actually finding participants. And so what they're doing now is actually using AI to help to find participants, because the problem with clinical trials is that participants have to match up within a very specific set of parameters to be eligible for a clinical trial. And oftentimes people that would normally be eligible for clinical trials, they don't know about it. Many of the providers are not aware that these clinical trials are going on, for example. And so using AI by one having access to these patient records, we're able to easily identify people who will be eligible for clinical trials, especially in a situation like this, given where we're literally throwing the kitchen sink of treatment at fighting the coronavirus.
No, absolutely. That's a good point, Dr. Fields. All right, last item on our docket is from technologyreview.com, Tech and Breakthrough Technologies for 2020. Here's our annual list of technological advances that we believe will make a real difference in solving important problems. How do we pick? We avoid one-off tricks, the overhyped new gadgets. Instead, we look for those breakthroughs that will truly change how we live and work. Unhackable internet, hyper-personalized medicine, digital money, anti-aging drugs, AI-discovered molecules, satellite mega constellations, quantum supremacy, tiny AI, differential privacy, climate change attribution.
Tiny AI, that was the stuff that NASA was talking about.
Mm-hmm. Unhackable internet. I'll skip right past that, but hyper-personalized medicine. Here's a definition of a hopeless case. A child with a fatal disease so exceedingly rare that not only is there no treatment, there's not even anyone in the lab, quote, studying it. Too rare to care, goes the same. That's about to change thanks to the new classes of drugs that can be tailored to a person's genes. If an extremely rare disease is caused by a specific DNA mistake, as thousands are, there's now at least a fighting chance for a genetic fix. One such case is that of Mila Makovic, a little girl suffering from a devastating illness caused by a unique genetic mutation, who got a drug manufactured just for her. Her case made the New England Journal of Medicine in October after doctors moved from a readout of her genetic error to a treatment in just a year. They called the drug Millicent after her. The treatment hasn't cured Miller, but it seems to have stabilized her condition. It has reduced her seizures, and she has begun to stand and walk with assistance. It's actually pretty good. Complex, can you advance the next person? Miller's treatment was possible because creating a gene medicine has never been faster or had a better chance of working. The new medicines might take the form of a gene replacement, gene editing, antisense, a sort of molecular eraser, which erases or fixes erroneous genetic messages. What the treatments have in common is that they can be programmed in a digital fashion and with digital speed to correct or compensate for inherited diseases, letter for DNA letter. How many stories like Miller's are there? So far, just a handful. But more on the way, where researchers would have once seen obstacles and said, I'm sorry, they now see solutions in DNA and think maybe they can help. The real challenge for N of 1 treatments, in reference to the number of people who get to the drug, is that they defy just about every accepted notion of how pharmaceuticals should be developed, tested, and sold. Who will pay for these drugs when they help one person, but still take large teams in design and manufacture? That's interesting. Dr. Finks, do you have anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, but one that we have that is called the orphan drugs. And but I'm kind of like curious, how is different? Maybe Dr. Phoenix, I don't know if this is your expertise, but you familiar with CRISPR case 9 and case 12?
I'm familiar with CRISPR as a whole, but not case 9 and case 12. And I'll get to that in a second. But I do want to say something really quickly. You have people that are born with genetic conditions that we're talking literally out of a 7 billion plus people in this planet. You can have 100 people in this world born with this specific genetic mutation, and there's no treatment because, again, I mean, what would be, for at least from a pharmaceutical standpoint, what would be the point of developing a drug to treat only 100 people out of the fact that you can get something like a beta blocker, like metoprolol, for example, where you can treat hundreds of millions of people every year with and make tons of money. And
Well,
there unfortunately there will always be a financial incentive that drives the drug development process,
They
because
call it
again,
economies of scale.
exactly. And again, you think about, for one drug, it can take a decade, maybe even 2 decades to bring to market, and at a minimum can cost anywhere between $200 to $1 billion plus.
right, but that's why my question to you, because they're talking about creating a drug where you have a misspelled letter. We know now that we can use CRISPR-9 to alter a small section of that, and CRISPR's case 12 to do a whole swat of that. So I think I don't know how much this guy knows about the genetics and how it's moving forward, but I think there's going to be a whole class of new techniques on gene therapy where you don't really use drugs. You use the actual change the letter back to what it should be.
I mean, that is very true. I mean, more importantly, I mean, it's not even just going in and changing the codon and anything like and stuff like that, but it's also about understanding that how can we best activate, like for example, in cancer. This is one of the major areas where you're seeing CRISPR being applied. And you think about cancer therapies and how essentially the traditional cancer therapies are essentially very toxic, but more importantly, cancer in of itself is very effective at evading the body's immune system. You think about something deadly like pancreatic cancer, which most people do not survive it. and the mortality from it is pretty high, along with that and esophageal cancer as well. And you think about how cancer cells can evade the body's detection system, the immunity, those antibodies or whatever. And so understanding how can we use CRISPR to go in and get the cells to identify when there is a cell that is not self
Mhm.
and within that environment. And so,
Right.
that's where this is also a major area where you see that application of CRISPR technology is being able to go in and individually switch
Uh,
on and off genes.
mhm. The expression.
Yeah, exactly. And so again, this is I mean, we're people think this is theory, of course, and for Black people, they think this is some mass grand
Well,
grand
I had a
conspiracy.
person call me the devil.
Look, look, you know what?
It
You
was
know,
one of these Baptist people that called me the devil. I was like, what?
regardless of what Black people think of this kind of technology, it's irrelevant because this is what's going forward. This is what this is what will define the 21st, the 22nd, and the 23rd centuries, and so on. Long after we are all gone,
Oh,
this will be the technology. And again,
gene.
this is not that this technology will necessarily benefit us; it will benefit subsequent generations.
Well, it's already benefiting us because they did the trial on the changing sickle cell for the in Los Angeles, I think it was LA or San Diego, where they actually changed the blood the blood cells from sickle to normal.
Yeah, and actually, it has long. It was what the current director of the CDC had came out. I want to say maybe about a year or so ago, and him along with a number of experts in the areas of genetics and genomics, they have long said that CRISPR most likely the first disease that CRISPR would cure is sickle cell. They've been saying this for years.
Hmm.
So I mean, it's long been known that CRISPR the application of CRISPR as it pertains to sickle cell anemia is very likely to be the first disease that most likely will be cured through this molecular process. So again, I think right now what things that we consider sort of science fiction, cutting edge, or the work of the devil, um, you know, this is not going anywhere. And despite Black folks want to apply this spiritual morality to these arguments that justify why we need this technology, look no further than the coronavirus.
Yep.
Okay, let me finish reading this. Finish reading this out. Digital money. Last June, Facebook unveiled a global digital currency called Libra. The idea triggered a backlash, and Libra may never launch, at least not in ways it was originally envisioned. But it still made a difference. Just days after Facebook's announcement, an official from the People's Bank of China implied that it would speed up the development of its own digital currency. In response, now China is poised to become the first major economy to issue a digital version of its digital money, which is intended to as a replacement for physical cash. So, I mean, we've long known that anti-aging drugs. The first wave of a new class of anti-aging drugs have been begun human testing. These drugs won't let you live longer yet, but aim to treat specific ailments by slowing or reversing fundamental process of aging. The drugs are called senolytics. They work by removing certain cells that accumulate as we age, known as senescence.
Cell senescence. Basically, what it means is that cells have lost the ability to grow and divide. And so those cells that can't grow and divide, they accumulate in the body and they become pathogenic, causing disease, and particularly disease of aging. One of the principal diseases of aging that you see is cancer, age-related macular degeneration, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. AI discovered, thank you for that. AI discovered molecules. Scientists have used AI to discover promising drug-like compounds. The universe of molecules that could be turned into potentially life-saving drugs is mind-boggling in size. Researchers estimated the number at around 1060. That's more than all the atoms in the solar system, offering virtually unlimited chemical possibilities if only chemists could find the worthwhile ones. Now, machine learning tools can explore large databases of existing molecules and their properties using the information to generate new possibilities. This could make it faster and cheaper to discover new drug candidates. In September, a team of researchers at Hong Kong-based in silico medicine and the University of Toronto took a convincing step toward showing that the strategy works by synthesizing several drug candidates found by AI algorithms. Using techniques like deep learning and generative models, similar to the ones that allow a computer to beat the world champion at the ancient game of Go, the researchers identified some 30,000 novel molecules with desirable properties. They selected 6 to synthesize and test. One was particularly active and proved promising in animal tests. Chemists in drug discovery often dream up of new molecules and are owned by years of experience and among the best drug hunters by a keen intuition. Now these scientists have a tool to expand their imaginations. This is interesting. I don't know if engineering cannabis has anything you want to add to that particular point.
Hey, Mike.
Hey, what's going on, dude?
I've been the whole topic about AI and all that has been fascinating. And the one aspect I looked into was basically understanding the process. Each data scientist, each AI machine learning engineer, the first thing you need to understand before you implement AI, you have to understand the process. So the process of basically solving basically how a body works, how an organ works, the process of how business works. That's the first process. Then implementing AI comes in later. Because if you don't understand the process, implementing AI at that point is a waste of time. Understanding the whole process basically makes sure you can implement AI at that point. So that's the most important part of AI machine learning, is understanding the process first, then going from there.
All right. Next one is Tiny AI. We can now run powerful AI algorithms on our phones. AI has a problem. In the quest to build more powerful algorithms, researchers are using even greater amounts of data and computing power and relying on centralized cloud services. This not only generates alarming amounts of carbon emissions, but also limits the speed and privacy of AI applications. But a counter trend of tiny AI is changing that. Tech giants and academic researchers are working on new algorithms to shrink existing deep learning models without losing their capabilities. Meanwhile, an emerging generation of specialized AI chips promises to pack more computational power into tighter physical spaces and train and run AI on far less energy. These advances are just starting to become available to consumers. Last May, Google announced that it can now run Google Assistant on users' phones without sending requests to a remote server. As of iOS 13, Apple runs Siri's speech recognition capabilities in its QuickType keyboard locally on the phone. IBM and Amazon also offer developer platforms for making and deploying tiny AI. All this could bring about many benefits. Existing services like voice assistants, autocorrect, and digital cameras will get better and faster without having to ping the cloud every time they need to access a deep learning model. Tiny AI will also make new applications possible, like mobile-based medical image analysis or self-driving cars with faster reaction times. Finally, localized AI is better for privacy, since your data no longer needs to leave your device to improve a service or a feature. But as the benefits of AI become distributed, so will all of its challenges. It could become harder to combat surveillance systems or deepfake videos, for example, and discriminatory algorithms could also proliferate.
Hey, Mike,
Go ahead.
I had a question. So I can so let me get kind of throw a thought at you, and you tell me if I'm seeing like like a real world application for this. So let's just take a fleet of scooters, for example, right? And let's say I got a version of them that had like a gyroscope. They had like a gyroscope element to them so that they were self-balancing. And so what the AI would do would actually reposition them, right? Based on maybe say demand, right? Or usage, right? So the scooters may actually activate and then move on their own, like based on sort of like this AI sort of algorithm, something like that, maybe.
Well, you would preset those instructions without AI anyways, right? You would need to the device to self-balance itself based on the gyro or the accelerometer where it is in position to the ground itself. So
Right,
you need AI for that, but the AI would come after that.
It would come after that part. It would actually deal with the logistic side of things.
No, that's an actual program called Swarm that's used for drones. They already figured that out. That's
Or
how.
is that what that is?
Yeah, it's a Swarm program. It's a guy from Brooklyn actually thought of it. It's how the birds they can fly next to each other but never collide.
Yeah.
So that's what it is. So that's what they're
Okay.
using for drones. So
Yeah, because
that's
I'm listening to it, and I got like a whole bunch of them in my garage, and I'm looking at them, and I'm thinking conceptually, right? So I wanted to kind of throw it out there as an idea. Is like, okay, but you're saying it's an application.
yeah, just look it up. It's called Swarm.
Yeah.
Like the swarm of birds. Yeah, it's an algorithm that a guy figured out.
Yeah.
And
Those. Go ahead.
go ahead, Mike.
No, I was just gonna say those instructions are already you already predefined those instructions when you designed out your device, right? So you wouldn't even use AI for that. The AI comes long after that. It's supposed to enable human interactions.
Right. So when a person gets on the bike and another one gets on the scooter, that swarm program won't let them. The AI will look at the swarm program and not let them collide.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the AI is going to actually be the eyes, right? So if the scooter's moving on its own to its next location, it's what controls and sees what's what out there and prevents it from being hit, recognizes traffic signals, pedestrians, stuff like that.
Well, no, pedestrians it won't, because pedestrians, unless it's reading, the pedestrians have some kind of electronics on them. But if it's another vehicle, like another swarm type vehicle, it should be able to adjust and make sure, or sensors
Kind
in the
of
road.
use other swarm connected devices as sort of
Right.
like okay, I got
That's
you.
what they're doing with the trucks. They have these sensors in the road, and they're actually having the trucks go down those sensors so they know exactly what's going on.
Let me get to this next piece right here. All right, this one is differential privacy, a technique to measure the privacy of a crucial data set. In 2020, the US government has a big task: collect data on the country's 330 million residents while keeping, it's interesting they call them residents and don't call them citizens, while keeping their identities private. The data is released in statistical tables that policymakers and academics analyze when writing legislation or conducting research. By law, the Census Bureau must make sure that it can't lead back to any individuals. But there are tricks to de-anonymize individuals, especially if the census data is combined with other public statistics. So the Census Bureau injects inaccuracies or noise into the data set, into the data. It might make some people younger and other older, or label some white people as Black and vice versa, while keeping the totals of each age or ethnic group the same. the more noise you inject, the harder de-anonymization becomes. Differential privacy is a mathematical technique that makes the process rigorous by measuring how much privacy increases when noise is added. The method is already used by Apple and Facebook to collect aggregate data without identifying particular users. But too much noise can render the data useless. One analysis showed that a differentially private version of the 2010 census included households that supposedly had 90 people. If all goes well, the method will likely be used by other federal agencies, countries like Canada and the UK are watching too. So, yeah, this is not, I mean, obviously like the article says it's been long talked about and thought of, but the thing here is that in this country, you have the Fourth Amendment, which is the right to privacy. And so that has to be taken into consideration for every individual citizen, because they, you know, if you're a citizen in this country, you are afforded the constitutional amendments. And the Fourth Amendment is the right to privacy. And so the idea here is to actually extract data that's critical to processing the census and things of that nature, but not actually taking the PII that's involved with the sensitive information of a person that would lead back to their identity. And so, yeah, there's got to be a better way. There's got to be a better way at managing all of these people's data. The problem here is that we're collecting data on people who are even not even citizens, and they're being included into this type of stuff. You know, residents and stuff like that. You know, people who are undocumented, so to speak, and they get tossed into there. And then what happens here is government census takes place. Government starts allocating resources for people who are not even citizens, so to speak, and you have misappropriations of funds and so on and so forth. It's just a big mess. It's a really, really, really big mess.
Well, that's not quite true about the census. The census is not for only citizens, it's for anybody living in that particular area. So it takes into account that there are illegals or people who um, uh, are not residents, as they say. So
I'm only referring to where the article says that, or at least the
I know, but I was just making the technical
errors.
thing that's what the census does.
I'm referring to the errors that what they call the noise being injected into the data.
The noise is the same thing as we do when we do passwords, when we do add a salt. We just put it into, it's just another version of that. And it won't pass. I mean, California is now going to pass their own version of GDPR. So I don't know how they're going to do all that anyway.
They did that in January. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Could I add something to this? Because I wanted to go back to the whole part where you talked about these new anti-aging drugs. They call them Cenacil.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to talk about something really quickly because there's a lot of discussions that happen in social media among Black people, and everything becomes this conversation about, this stuff is evil. There's this whole spiritual morality argument that Black folks have, and I don't want to be the bearer of bad news, but here's the problem. The reason why you have situations like what we're dealing with the coronavirus and how Black people wholly stand to be the major recipients of a lot of really bad stuff that is happening as a result of this is because, there tends to be these series of behaviors that Black people engage in that tend to be very regressive, but also just kind of this over reliance on these, really these old wives' tales, things that kind of really don't, when you think about it at face value, doesn't make a lot of sense. But I know, there's always this part of Black people that will always be cynical and skeptical, and rightfully so. But when you're thinking about the applications of technology and how they're using CRISPR and AI and stuff like that to develop new classes of drugs, these are things that are going to wholly affect Black people, probably more so than any other group of people, especially in this country.
I agree with that. But remember, um, this country has had a dark past of using Black people as guinea pigs.
And that's very true. You know, I would never take anything from that. Again, as someone who has been engaged in research and having been very much involved in the IRB process and having to write one or assist in writing one, I very much understand the need for there to be protections. But again, that cannot be an excuse as to why there's regressive talk. There's talk about stuff like, some of the discussions I've heard in social media, and certainly things that I've heard in this space, where Black folks are talking about, oh, people are not dying. Black folks have
Well,
this
well,
special
uh,
gene
okay. Well,
where the body's
that's also
Let him finish,
because.
Black Torch, let him finish.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
and,
No,
and what I'm saying is that when you think about stuff like this, like this new class of anti-aging drugs, for example, in the application of CRISPR in developing these drugs, again, cell senescence, that again refers to the fact that cells have lost their ability to grow and divide. And part of that growth and division is that on the ends of your chromosomes, you have something called telomeres. So every time a cell divides, those telomeres are responsible for protecting those chromosomes, so they prevent coding errors, which ultimately lead to genetic mutations and abnormalities. But those telomeres, every time a cell divides, they get shorter and shorter and shorter till eventually they cannot do their job. And then that's where you get the cell senescence, and that's where you get that's where you start to get these coding errors and these genetic abnormalities that start to appear in people. And specifically, when you look at like some of the major issues around aging, diabetes, cancer, vision issues, so like age-related macular degeneration. Uh, and so you think about how many of these diseases, Black people tend to be disproportionately represented among many of these diseases, and understanding that this is not just something that, oh, well, the development of these particular classes of drugs or whatever will somehow just magically do something special to you, but then somehow make sure everyone else gets well. No, that's not how this works. And I get the cynicism that Black people have when it comes to medical science. But again, you're not going to escape this. As long as you're a part of this fabric, you can't on one hand complain about the white man is trying to kill us and they're trying to do all these other things, but on the other hand, you're asking them to do something to help you. Those two cannot exist in the same space. So you have to give something. And I'm not saying, again, and I want to be clear about this, I'm not saying that Black folks don't have a right to be cynical, but Black folks better understand that at the end of the day, either you're going to provide your own brain power to do the ethical thing and to do what's right for your people, or you're going to cry about what everyone else does to you.
well, I'll give an example of that. I was telling somebody about the trials they're using for metformin on anti-aging and also for anti-inflammatory. And they're also doing it in France because they were saying about the COVID was also um, doing a study to see if that helped with the inflammatory of the lungs. So, and I try to tell them this, and they said, no, you can't really do that. That's evil. You know what I'm saying? You got to get out of it. They don't believe in science. They don't believe in facts. This is a major problem we have.
We have a culture of Luddites.
You know.
But this goes back to the article you was reading earlier, where they were talking about the CDC having to use, I was talking about this in the opening, where, they've been using AI and artificial intelligence and machine learning to track the progression of this disease, but also they've been using it because they hired an entire army of data scientists to track all the misinformation that's been going on about the coronavirus. Again, this became such a prolific issue that even last week, the Surgeon General had to speak on it. And the Surgeon General is a black man.
Yeah.
And the Assistant Surgeon General is a black woman.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people don't know that, but yes.
Yeah.
And the sad part about it, I was on Twitter a couple days ago, and there are black folks on there making fun of the brother.
Oh yeah, I heard it too.
And yeah, and that is probably the most disturbing part of this, is that you making fun of a man who's really making an appeal for black people to stop engaging in the straight silly talk,
Mhm.
and the old wives' tale, and understanding that no matter how much you say this group of people did this to you, or this is the devil's work, or we have to have this spiritual moral view and take on this, it doesn't take away from the fact that if I go to Chicago, and I'm from Chicago, and that you have black people that are a third of the population, and technically they used to be higher than that, but we're not going to talk about that, but you're 70% of the deaths from the coronavirus. Doesn't take away from the fact that for black women, the leading cause of death is heart attack. For black men, you're 6 times more likely to die from prostate cancer than a white man. And you're more likely to develop it earlier in your life than a white man does. And there are very specific reasons for why that happens. But this idea that we're not going to tackle very significant.
Doc, you went away again.
No, I'm just saying, the idea that we're not going to tackle very
No, your microphone. We can't hear you.
I'm sorry, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Yeah. The idea that black people are not going to tackle very significant health challenges that face us no matter what is going on. Because if anything, what the coronavirus, what this current pandemic has showed, that there's a lot of health issues that black people have, that black people have been wholly not ignorant about, but very passive about.
Mm-hmm.
And again, until we start to tackle those challenges, because I can do all the education in the world, it doesn't take away from the fact that if I got to argue with people about very basic stuff related to your health, I get nowhere, and neither does Black society.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
No, I just wanted to bring that up because I think Black people should be wholly involved in the development of these technologies, wholly involved with the science and the research. But again, that has to be brain power that has to come from within, from us.
Mm-hmm.
And you're not gonna get that if you're sitting here teaching your sons and daughters that, yeah, this is the work of the devil. This is evil.
It's a way to escape responsibility.
Well, I don't think it's way. I think it is it's they're stuck. They don't really. They're scared of moving forward, and the only thing they know is the past. So you got to listen to
Yeah, but the information about the past isn't even correct either.
Oh, we know that, but that doesn't stop them.
Well, that's what I'm saying is it's a way to escape being responsible. I don't have to do anything because we just won't have to look at this, and then that will solve everything if we just kind of just bury our head in the sand. That's cowardly. You got brothers on here talking about, well, I don't want to go to college because I don't want to be Me Too'd. That's unacceptable, man. That's a coward approach. That's a coward approach.
But Mike, you also have the take for instance me.
Mm-hmm.
I try to get my kids to follow a certain path. You can choose to be an art major,
Mm-hmm.
but I also want you to be engineer. You know what I'm saying? You got to take some engineering classes. You got to take some computer classes.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? You got to be a dual major in my book.
Mm-hmm.
But when their mother starts saying, leave the boy alone, and when I start pressing him or the teacher in school start pressing him, she get upset. you can't. We are not going to progress.
Listen, if you got to
And
cut,
you have a lot of women doing that to their sons. They want their sons to be basket. When she thought he was going to be a football player, I was spending $600 a month to send him to football camp. You
yeah,
know, you got mothers who want their children to be quick buck, but they're not thinking. You know, in my
Well,
case, it was football, and a lot of other parents' cases, you know, you want to be a rapper or you gotta sell some drugs on the street so that you know, mom is the only one around to raise me up, and I gotta make some money to
well,
help her out. And, you know,
yeah,
you
but
can't. That
it,
doesn't work for the community. You gotta encourage your kids to go to school,
but DE, if you
get
have a,
that education.
yeah, but DE, if you have a cutlass at home, you take that cutlass and you show.
Cutlass. What are we, a
No,
buccaneer now? Cutlass.
oh man,
Hey, that's the word it is, man. All
yeah.
Yeah.
over the world except for America.
In
Um,
America, they call it a machete, but almost a cutlass. So you take that cutlass and you show him. It's either you do this or it's this right here. Which one do you want?
yeah, but it doesn't work here. I'm telling you, it doesn't
At
work.
home in the Caribbean, yeah.
Yeah, in the Caribbean, Latin America, and the Middle East, yeah. But here, no, you say one thing and the child is on the thing called protective services on you, you know.
Well, I'm being facetious, but the point here is that like Dr. Phoenix is saying, there's a lot of shucking and jiving, and there's a lot of people who are Luddites, you know, in the community. The people are just Luddites. They adopt the technology. They got the iPhone, they got the iPad, they got the latest whatever it is, the watch or whatever, but they don't actually drive the technology. And what Dr. Phoenix is saying, either you're going to give your brain power to actually drive your people forward, or you're going to fall behind. You can't really blame anybody else for that.
Well, we had this discussion before. We know that everybody's not going to make it. I'm sorry to say that. And the smart people will see the trend and do what they got to do. The other people, I'm sorry to say, they're going to be a class of people left behind. And that's how it, because they don't want to listen. You tell them something and they don't want to listen to you. They look at you like you're an alien.
Mhm.
And that's what I was talking about when Dr. Phoenix was talking about the Surgeon General. They were making fun of him the way he talked. He, he was just a normal guy telling you what you needed to hear, but they if you don't talk a certain way, they just look at you like you're an alien.
Listen, when Nipsey Hussle died, you would have thought the Pope got shot. You would have thought that,
And I'll be honest, I didn't even know who this guy was.
I mean, but the way Black people, especially the women, revered this guy, man. I mean, you would have thought that he was Gandhi or something. But
Because he's that what's it call it, that what they call that, the thug that has money and
educated,
charisma. Yeah.
oh no, no, it's a it's a fallacy. It's nothing more than a fallacy. And but what I'm saying is, and to Dr. Phoenix's point about this Surgeon General and the Assistant Surgeon General, you know, how Black people see themselves in proximity to the success of other Black people is very eye-opening and very damaging to the culture itself, and can't see that 20 years from now or a generation from now, how this is going to impact them going forward. And so people get mad at me when I say, Africans are at least a generation ahead in intellectual prowess or intellectual capability, intellectual capacity for that matter.
Well, well, you've been to the continent. I've been to the continent. You know that we're seeing only the top slice of these people.
Oh, brother, no, no, this isn't the top slice. I
Wait,
met.
wait. Let me finish. No, but I mean, when I went to school and when I did my undergraduate and master's degree, and now I'm doing some classes for my PhD. You compete with these guys. I have nothing. I'm just telling you that a lot of these guys already went to England. They went to have these classes, or because I asked the guy, I said, "You know this already?" He said, "Yes, I took the class in England." I said, "What are you taking it here?" He says, "I needed to get credits." So I'm just telling you, they're not the normal. Like I grew up in Brooklyn. I sound like I come from Brooklyn, and I was the first one to go to college in my family. So it's they're ahead because they don't have all the issues that we have.
Well, that's what I'm saying. They're intellectually already ahead. Black people here aren't thinking like this.
Well, I think it's more cultural because they have a culture that doesn't frown upon you being educated and you're looking like, you got to look like, I hate to use this guy's words, but a certain swagger.
So what drives culture?
Oh no, we're not gonna go through this one because we went through this thing and it's the women that drive the culture.
No, it's people drive culture.
No, no, the one who gives the nurturing, the one who drives the culture, and this is through anthropology and all that. Who's the one who gives the child the culture is usually in the first 6 years of life is the woman. Hello?
Yeah, we're here.
Yeah. Oh, I thought I was and normally after that, the men take over and show if it's a boy how to be a boy, if a mother, But it's weird here. I mean, I lived in other countries. I lived in Brazil. I lived in Asia,
Mhm.
and it's just it was an eye opener. And in Brazil and Tokyo, they go to classes on Saturday and they have school on Saturday for the most of the day. So they go 5 days and they go Saturdays. And we have nothing like that.
Some of the schools in Brazil have the same thing.
Yeah, they call what they call positivos.
Yeah.
Yeah. Você fala português?
Un poco.
Ah, okay. Yeah. So, I mean, if we had and the thing about it, because we don't control the our children here, the women control the children. What do you think, Mike? Is that not true?
No, I'm not saying that's not that part is not true. I'm saying to what Dr. Phoenix is saying that this brother was being mocked, by other black people, and then these same people expect that the people that they have this sort of axe to grind against are going to look out for their best interest. You already failed. It's
Yeah,
already
but Mike, when I was growing up, I was mocked. They did the same thing to me. We all get the same thing. If you're smarter than the rest of the people, they look at you like you're an alien. I'm just telling you.
what I'm saying here is this is the last hurrah. This is it. There is no coming back after this fourth industrialization. There is no coming back from this. If you don't skill up now and you don't compete now, you're screwed.
Well, then it's going to be like that guy Robinson predict, the splintering of Black America. And that's what it's going to look like because the other
Robert,
people are not listening.
Oh, Black America is already splintered.
Yeah, I mean, that I listen to the people. The people say, "Oh, these are ADOS people and all this," and I'm looking at them. I'm just like, "What are you talking about? We have an expression in the military. We need every swinging dick up there working to get this shit done." You know. And these guys talking about, "Oh, we're gonna split this group and from this other group," and these guys are. I said, "No, we need all the smart people to put together and help us get through this thing," but they don't want to do it. They just don't want to do it.
no, man, so put your head in the sand and hope that hope that it blows over. My
And it's gonna blow over, right? You're gonna be watching, and then they get upset. I mean, I go to these meetings, and you know, you talk to people, and then you try to community leaders, and you talk to them, and it's sometimes I just don't even want to be bothered because it's getting nowhere.
Yeah, that's the
You remember, if you remember, Mike, when I first started coming on the panels, you know, we were talking about the 2050 prediction and black wealth and that stuff. And I've always said, you know, you don't have to wait to 2050. It's going to be in the next decade. And lo and behold, here we are, what, 7, 8 months later now, you know, that's looking more and more like the reality of what black people are facing. You're not going to have to wait the next 20 or 30 years. It's going to happen within the next decade. And
yeah.
again, I think it's very true what you said. This is the last hurrah. If black people don't get this right this century, there won't be another century.
No, no.
Or not these black people, will be a different set of black people.
Hey, well, this is Eugene Robinson's book,
Yep.
The Disintegration of Black America. I mean,
And note
everyone knows this.
and notice that I think black men sense it because they're already looking for other partners outside of this. You know, that's why the SYSBN people, that's why they're sensing that, hey, I gotta have somebody who's smart, who's not gonna, and that's why the biggest pushback, I think, because every day I see it on the what is it called, the manosphere. I see them attacking them all the time.
Well, you know, and that's the thing, right? Because there's so much discussion had about female nature and why women do what they do. But Black Torch, that's an excellent point to point out here, right? Like survival strategies for, say, men. Okay, and why that is looked at as now something that is viable due to that very reason that you just mentioned here. Okay, because in all honesty, and you know, this kind of, I wanted to circle back to a point that Mike was making, you know, in terms of culture, and we're, you know, and you say that, well, no, women instill culture, but we have to actually kind of think just one level or one layer above that. You know, what gives, what culture or what is behind the culture that woman would instill that would give the best outcomes, right? That would be intelligence. That would be intelligence. So a culture of intelligence, a woman that has the ability to instill that, is basically what is going to be what is preferred. If you want the 3.0 technocratic position on it, i.e. sapiosexualism. So, I mean, this is all very much a part of the mandate, you know, but I wanted to speak to Mike's point because, you know, they've been kind of spread out, but we've actually done a few. We did one recently on the whole sapiosexual piece. Maybe you were there. I think you might have been there, Black Torch. I was working that day, but that's where all this ties in. That's where intelligence becomes a key piece, a key component to all this.
Well, I think part of it is because you know, at its core, women are the vanguard of a society's values.
Yep.
And at the end of the day, if you know, as men, you do have to make this calculated choice of, you know, is this gonna be a reputable woman that I can share, you know, I can have children with. She will raise them with the right frame of mind. They will be successful, and she will actually instill with them in values that will be useful throughout their lives, that they can take, and it doesn't become this sort of regressive issues that we see as it pertains to the general values that Black people have. And as it pertains to the brother that's the Surgeon General, you know, the thing they were making fun about was not just the way he was taught. They were making fun of that the brother's married to a white woman.
Oh, well, you know, that is just a
He's an
uh,
anesthesiologist, and he's married to a white woman.
because he made a calculated choice.
But therein lies the fundamental problem that Black people are faced with. You cannot make fun of your best and your brightest, no matter who they are, and then expect them to function in your own self-interest. You cannot do that.
Wow.
And Black people try to have this. Black people try to have their cake and eat it too. You want to make fun of this brother, but then but then say he's goofy or he's all these other things, and oh, he's a coon and he's a sellout and all these and everything else you can think of. Because what? Because he made a statement. He did make a general statement. I just see there was nothing wrong with what he said. What he said was true. Because black folks do resort to the stuff that Big Mama say. Because every time you talk about, Big Mama said this, Big Mama put this clove of garlic near my ear and it cured the ear infection. Yeah, that's Big Mama stuff. That's old wives' tale. Are they just mad because he told the truth, or they just mad because they think white folks don't know the truth? Because black folks think white folks don't know the truth. I got some land on Mars to sell you.
Well, I think the issue is just basically I don't know what to tell you. I just see it's already the die is cast because BGS did a whole thing about what they call it, the educated lame, and should they left the black community, and I was laughing because I said they already left. I don't know. None of my friends only have one friend that's married to a black woman. One. The rest of them Asian, Jewish, white, but
Brother,
not.
go look at the brothers you find in medical school. You will be hard pressed to find. I'll probably say 2/3 of them you're not gonna find with a black woman.
Yep.
I mean, you look at these brothers that got there, and anyone that's ever gone to medical school, gone through the whole process, they would tell you it's hellish, man. We're talking about you go spend years of your life, a decade minimum, broke. And there's not a whole lot. And unfortunately, I hate to say it this way, a lot of black women ain't on board for that.
No, they want you self-made already.
Yeah, you got to be 21, making 6 figures a year, and if you're not, you're a joker.
Yeah, Dr. T.S. Johnson has a whole entire video series on that. He talks about that unrealistic expectations of black males that women have, and the low expectations that men have of the women.
The bag must be gotten.
Well, just the fact that she's a black woman is just enough. Whereas for black women and what their expectations of him is all of these sort of hodgepodges of a Negro. You know,
it's the physicality is the first, but like I said, if I was going to give a woman a test, actual. Hey, if you can figure out these equations, then we can talk. Because that's the way I'm just. That's how my point is with these. Because I'm tired of. Oh, what do you do? And no. Hey, this. I went out with this this Chinese doctor, right? And the first thing she asked me is, are we gonna on the first date? She said, we're not gonna go through this dating thing because I want to know if we're gonna go all the way. And that was so shocking to me because I never had a woman just come out and say she was actually breaking out the spreadsheet and figuring out if I was going to be a good candidate or not.
Yeah.
Every black woman that I've met, well, I shouldn't say it, for the last about, 20 years, has been, I am black and that should be enough for you.
Yeah.
I'm a woman, that should be enough for you.
To make families, you got to make black families.
You know what? Just the fact that I'm talking to you should be good enough.
No, that was when we were buying together, but not anymore. That's not enough. I owe a thing to my legacy of my genetics to make sure that we didn't survive all this time to give it away.
Bro, the first time I learned different, like what you said, is when I landed in Brazil for a weekend.
Oh, shoot.
And
only a weekend?
That the first time I went there was for a weekend, 3-day weekend.
Oh, you wanna that was your shore leave. Okay.
No. I just started working for U8.
Oh, okay.
Shoot. I just started working for an airline, and we used to fly to Brazil. As a matter of fact, we just started flying to Brazil. And we were flying to Brazil in for a few years. Yeah, we were flying to Brazil for a few years. In 1991, I decided, you know what, head down to Brazil. Hello, my goodness.
You never want to come back up here and date these women. You just look at these women like they're aliens up here. You just are like, I'm
Well, I don't want to spend too much time talking about women, but I do want to, give a shout out to Gabe in the chat. Gabe says, nah, we didn't leave the Black community. The majority of us just don't broadcast it. Interesting comment coming from a quote unquote 2.0 guy.
I didn't get the comment. What he said?
Nah, we didn't leave the Black community. The majority of us just don't broadcast it. I mean,
Who said anything about leaving the Black community?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. That's the disingenuous
Wait.
argument.
Who was that? Who
That's
was
the
that?
Gabe, a self-certified 2.0 manosphere. So he said that I'll repeat it again. Nah, we didn't leave the Black community. The majority of us just don't broadcast it.
Is this brother like Candyman or something? He just pop up?
Yeah. Well, I don't know if he made broadcasting like, loop back like 127.0.000.
It's amazing. Every time you say something, they show up. It's just amazing.
Look, I never said nothing about leaving the Black community. I'm just talking in general about the fact that this conversation is very much related to the idea of Black folks think it's cool to be on YouTube or Twitter making fun of a Black Surgeon General when he's literally making an appeal to Black folks so that you don't end up in cities like Chicago or states like Louisiana, where you got Black folks a third of the population, but they're 70% of the deaths from the coronavirus. Mm-hmm. He's making an appeal to that, but Black folks are making fun of that.
Or Robert Smith.
We look at everything as entertainment. If it doesn't entertain us, we don't get serious about it. And I heard, people told me that already, especially women say, you know what, unless you can make me laugh, you have to be able to make me laugh. I said, oh yeah? That's you get into a relationship to make somebody laugh? I mean, serious.
And again, this is not quote unquote about Black women per se, but this is about the fundamental approach that Black society has to dealing with some of the fundamental issues that unfortunately have plagued us before we stepped off the plantations and plagued us long after we stepped off the plantation.
That's what I'm saying. We take serious things that we have to make entertainment out of everything.
Yeah. There can never be this true serious talk about what does Black society have to do to be a society of the 21st century. Everyone else seems to have their 50 and 100-year plan, and I've yet to see what Black folks are going to do for the next 100 years.
I think immigrant Black people, the other people have a good idea of what they want to do. It's just that you're trying to drag a dead horse along, and that's the problem. See, you got to cut the horse off.
Are you saying? Well,
I'm sorry. I tried. I've been trying. I'm like I said, I'm a Black engineer NSB member, and I've tried many times, and it's Well,
they have their own issues, but the thing is, we were having this conversation over in Africa in Joburg, and we were having this conversation about the future of Africa as a whole and on the global stage for Black people, and their estimations is that we're moving into a new decade of technocrats. Okay. Black technocrats will emerge out of all of the fourth industrialization, and that the idea that these old traditional legacy people, these 2.0 sort of people, man, they don't have a future because they have not embraced what's coming down the pipe.
Yeah, like I was reading about in Nigeria. Nigeria now is setting up this whole genomic center that is gonna rival. They're trying to rival what's going on in the West. So I was like fascinated because that's my area. So that's why I was
I've been
interested.
talking about genomics since day one I came on this panel.
Oh,
I
I didn't.
mean,
I thought you said Jerome.
No, Jerome. No, no. Okay, genetics. Let me just say genetics.
you know, I
Molecular genetics. Okay.
yeah, I've been talking about this since day one coming on panels, and this is where this is one of the sciences that will define the 21st, 22nd, 23rd, and all the centuries thereafter going forward. And again, and there's a good reason for this because it's from this where you're hearing stories of where now we're developing anti-aging medications. It's only there's so much work. I don't know if black folks know there's so much work right now being done around the areas of aging where
Yep.
they're this close to cracking the aging process.
Well, if you listen to Dr. Sinclair, David Sinclair,
Yeah, I'm
they're
familiar with his
they're
work.
doing trials already with NMN and
Yeah,
Strevostol and all these other compounds that
yeah,
is doing just that.
yeah. Revesterol, which is anyone's not familiar, that is the extract that comes from red grapes.
Yep. And
And that extract has been shown to not just fight cancer, but also shown to be very much involved with anti-aging and can potentially even reverse the aging process.
Why do you think red wine is a thing?
Yeah, because it contains very high amounts of cholesterol.
yeah.
They're even using this to fight chronic kidney disease, which is an area, since Gabe is out there, that's an area where black folks are wholly overrepresented. Chronic kidney disease, kidney transplant, black folks
Mhm.
13% of the population, but you're 40% of people waiting for a kidney transplant. Make that make sense.
Yeah, and it's you know Dr. Phoenix, are you aware of the study that they did now that they can they can do a cell and build a whole organism from a cell?
Yeah, well, there was a story, and I think maybe Complex might be familiar with it. About a couple years ago, they had the story of the Zodiac killer, and you know how they found out who he was?
Genetics.
They didn't have his DNA. They had his family's. They had a family member's DNA,
Yep.
and they traced him through the family member. This is where we're at.
Yeah, that's the story of it, man. They actually
Yeah,
found him through a family member.
yeah. This is where we're at. So this idea, these silly ass notions of look, I don't get into this because this is not my area. I let the brothers that have those conversations, they had those conversations. It's not what I do. But
Did you
but I
did you
but
did
but
you
my
also
point
hear
is
about
simply that
the
I am a futurist and a technocrat at heart. I am fundamentally of the belief that black folks have need to wholeheartedly be involved in where the future is going. And the future right now is pointing to uh, terrestrial space exploration, terraforming. These are not just things that are just in the realm of science fiction or what you saw in the movie Man of Steel, where you saw the Kryptonians terraforming the Earth. No, this is stuff they've been talking about this for decades.
that's why they was looking for water on Mars, because if they can do water on Mars, then they can start terraforming, sending bacteria over. That's why they
Yeah,
said those what are those what are those animals? They dropped them on the moon. Tardigrades.
yeah. And there's a whole area of biology that's actually rather difficult to get into called astrobiology that deals exactly with that, dealing with organisms that can survive in space, that can survive on asteroids, comets, can survive in a vacuum of space, can survive without oxygen. There's a whole area of biology that deals with most black people don't know. There's only a handful of people in this country, in the world, that actually are experts in this area of astrobiology.
Dr. Phoenix, don't forget that pre-recorded content is also going to be a big thing.
I don't care about none of that crap.
All right, man. Let me close this down, man. Thank you all for joining us. Please hit the like button if not already done so. Share the video if possible. Hit that notification bell so you get all the updates from the Black Brain Trust, including those posted on the community tab. Document description beneath the video for you to reference. Thank you, Dr. Phoenix, for showing up, as well as Black Torch.
No, thank you, brother, for always having me, man. Really appreciate it.
Yep, me too. Thank you.
And shalom.